your bill. Some folks from Appropriations, it's jointly assigned. We have Delegate Forbes here with us, and Delegates Wolek and Beauchamp may run in and join us as well. So if you have a question, Delegate Forbes, just hop up to a seat and you can ask. And with that, Delegate Kaufman, you can go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. It's always a joy to be back in Ways and Means, where it all started for me, because Chair Hickson gave me my first job out of college, and I got to meet the awesome Stan Ward and the awesome Sarah Hartman, who was the MoCo delegation administrator at the time. So it's fun coming back home. Good afternoon, Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins, and esteemed colleagues. For the record, I am Delegate Aaron Kaufman, representing District 18, Montgomery County. I'm requesting a favorable report on education discrimination policies and notice requirements that I've shortened to the Student Misconduct Notification Bill. This issue was brought to my attention by RAIN, the largest anti-sexual violence organization in the nation. HB 495 would require schools to bring their policies and resources forward and proactively communicate them to their school community for grades K through 12. No, I'm on the right bill. For grades K through 12 and universities. Schools are already required to have sexual misconduct notification policies. Thus, this legislation imposes no new policies on schools and universities. This will ensure victims of sexual violence are able to find the resources they need after experiencing a traumatizing sexual violence. It took a victim of sexual assault in Montgomery County 25 minutes to find MCPS's resources and policies on sexual assault. When survivors of sexual assault are experiencing a moment of crisis, they are left digging through web pages or Googling what to do, in some instances with their parents, in some instances not, because information and resources are being buried deep in school websites. Students and staff need to know where to go and who to go to ahead of time, as most sexual assault victims cannot be expected to be at their best after an extremely traumatizing event of sexual violence. Victims deserve to have easy access to the resources and policies available to them. Across the board, only a third of students feel very knowledgeable about where to get help and how to report sexual misconduct. I know this anecdotally also because both of my interns are from the University of Maryland College Park, and neither of them said they would know where to look or what to do. Victims of sexual assault who have experienced a traumatizing event should not be forced to dig deep to find resources they need. We need to do a better job for victims of sexual violence. 21% of middle schoolers reported that they experienced unwanted physical touching, and 26.4% of females and 6.8% of undergraduate males, so it affects males too, experience rape or sexual assault. At the University of Maryland College Park, my alma mater, approximately 1/3, about 30.7% of students have not received any information about sexual assault from UMD during the 2022 academic year, the latest year that data is available, and all those stats came courtesy of RAIN that I mentioned earlier. A lack of transparency means students are more hesitant to come forward, and more students are put at risk. No victim of violence should feel unheard or have the need to look on a website for over 25 minutes just to find resources that are already existing there to help them. I understand in terms of the University System of Maryland's a letter of information, which is about the cost. But I believe this bill saves them and school systems money in the long run because it prevents them. It may cost them a little more on the front end, but it would cost more in the long run due to litigation costs and lawsuits and bad press in the long run. I also frankly think that while this year they're talking about the cost, I think even if we had a surplus, they would be opposed because in my experience, The University System of Maryland doesn't like bills where they feel they're being told what to do, but I think this is critically important. Therefore, I ask for a favorable report on HB 495, the Sexual Misconduct Notification Bill. And thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions, although I may defer to my expert panel if that's all right with you, Madam Chair.
Okay, should we have before we do questions, Stefan Turkheimer come on up? And then virtually, we have Liz Hammond and Wendy Novak. We'll see if they're here, but you may go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Stefan Turkheimer. I'm Vice President of Public Policy for the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network, known as RAIN. RAIN is the largest provider of anti-sexual violence programming in this country. We run the National Sexual Assault Hotline. I want you to imagine your child comes home from school and they are not themselves. Maybe it lasts a day, a week, all semester. And when they finally disclose to you that they have experienced or are experiencing a sexual assault at school, what do you do? What do you do? When there's a sexual assault in your school community, what do you do? That is the question that every parent, every college student, every teacher, every school nurse, and every school administrator needs to know the answer to, and they need to know before an assault occurs. But right now, people have to dig through web pages, hunt down handbooks, and spend hours figuring out what resources exist, all while trying to cope with the aftermath of an assault. When your kid discloses to you, you want to know that they won't have to sit in class with the perpetrator. You want to know who in the school will know if you report the assault. You want to know how to make a report. A dangerous gap exists between the policies and resources schools have for cases of sexual assault and their survivors of sexual assault who need them. These resources are not getting to students, parents, and teachers when they need to know. Policies and resources are buried deep and left to be found only when needed in a moment of crisis, which is not the time to go looking for them. Students who experience sexual assault are more likely to earn lower GPAs, struggle with emotional self-regulation, and without knowing how to do so, they may not report the assault, leaving the perpetrator to get away with no accountability and harm others. Students and staff need to know this before it happens, just like if they run a fire drill to know what to do in a crisis. Knowing where to go and who to go to ahead of time makes it more likely they will be able to access those resources when they are in the middle of a trauma. This bill tells schools to bring their policies and resources forward and proactively communicate them to the school community. I hope you will vote to favorably report HB 495, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Ms. Novak, for 2 minutes, please. Well, while you figure out how to unmute yourself, I'll let Liz Hammond go for 2 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Atterbury and esteemed committee members. My name is Liz Hammond. I'm a resident of Howard County. I'm speaking today in support of HB 495 on behalf of Community Allies of Rainbow Youth, or CARY for short. Our partnership with Howard County Public Schools has provided us with countless opportunities to speak with administrators, teachers, students, and families about ways to make HCPSS more inclusive. So bringing the policy forward is the perspective that we're coming from today. This bill will help mitigate many of the micro-discriminatory acts that happen dozens of times a day that never make it on any formal report or referral. For example, teachers have told us that they won't correct students who misgender or dead name trans students because they're afraid that the parents of the corrected student will complain to the principal, and they aren't sure if who their administrator will side with or who policy dictates their administrator should side with. And they don't want to get in trouble. So everyone who interacts with children needs to understand what is expected not only of themselves, but of everyone else. If we were to suggest amendments at all, it would be to make sure that the students are trained on what their teachers are expected to do, and teachers are trained on what the administrators are expected to do, so that everyone is comfortable with everyone else's level of compliance with the policies that are posted. Many incidents can be resolved in a matter of moments with simple redirection from a teacher or an adult in the room. And, just like potential offenders need to know the rules and victims need to know their rights, everyone else needs to just have confidence that the teacher's response or the administrator's response is going to be predictable and reliable. Similarly, families need to understand all of these anti-discrimination policies just as thoroughly as students and staff. Many parents are shocked to learn that gender identity and sexual orientation are not a legal basis for demanding schedule changes. I'll wrap it up. Sorry. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Ms. Novak?
I am grateful Maryland has protection for our students and provides mechanisms for complaints to the state. This is one of the better kept secrets in Carroll County, though. I'm not even sure Carroll's BOE is aware of this. They certainly do not act in a manner that is non-discriminatory, and they never share there is a method for reporting discrimination to the state. Members of the BOE often make discriminatory comments, referring to certain identity groups as something others need to be protected from while passing discriminatory policies. Title IX complaints go to someone that indirectly reports to the BOE, which makes investigating claims against them to be a conflict of interest. Carroll's anti-discrimination policy seems to be another secret in this county. The only thing available is a legal statement that they do not discriminate. The students need the requirement that the policy be written in plain language that is age appropriate. I have begged for years for the school system to allow teachers to tell students that bullying and harassment based on someone's identity is wrong. It's not allowed to be in the classroom syllabus or age appropriate version in the classroom rules. Students do not receive information on how to report discrimination. Our students need the training requirement in this bill. Currently, the only way a student would learn about discrimination is at home. As a parent of a sexual assault survivor, I know how important it is to provide these resources for our students. Anti-discrimination policies are more than a statement. They require a list of actions to be taken, known to everyone. Some counties will do the bare minimum regarding anti-discrimination. They want to hide that anti-discrimination policies exist. Let's make sure the bare minimum is not simply words, but a requirement of publicly available actions, not a secret. I request a favorable report on HB 495. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Yes, Delegate Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for bringing the bill, Delegate. So as I was reading the bill, I just was wondering what this information would look like in a pre-kindergarten classroom, as stated in the bill, and would this include, because it says any state funding, would this include then our public-private partnerships would also need to post material? So, thank you.
Well, the way, the way as a former school board member yourself, you know that school boards set policy, and so school boards would adopt the policies, but I understand there may be some disagreement because of things like pronouns or different things, but the real, but I don't think that that's not why I introduced the bill. The reason I introduced the bill is because I think across the ideological spectrum, we can all agree that rape is abhorrent, sexual assault is abhorrent, and we've heard from Rain that I didn't come up with this myself. Rain asked me specifically to put this in because of calls they get on their hotline. And so, I'm sure, I think as legislators, we have to have humility, and I'm sure that the Frederick County School Board will come up with appropriate policies, and I don't think it's too onerous because it's things like putting it in a large font or emailing the policies to parents and things that aren't onerous.
Yeah, definitely, and I understand that. And certain levels, it just specifically mentions pre-kindergarten programs. So if any of your panel has expertise on what that would look like in a pre-K classroom, that would be great.
Well, I'm interested in hearing his response, but what I would just like to say, based on the chair's eloquence this morning on the bill that we debated for a while in sex ed, I think just like the content is going to be age appropriate, in the chair's bill, the content would be age appropriate in my bill. But I wonder if my witness has an answer.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you so much for the question. Generally, schools will produce age. An elementary school may have a different policy than a high school or a college or what have you. And the real key is communicating whatever policy that they have to the students so they know what to do in the case of a sexual assault. Elementary school policies are much more concentrated generally on like good touch, bad touch education. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but basically it talks about
Yes.
boundaries. Obviously you are.
Yes.
But really talking about what is relevant to kids at that age and so knowing what they need to do. It's also about communicating with the parents so that they know what to do in that situation as well. I hope that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for
I
bringing the
mean,
bill, Delegate.
just one last thing. I don't think I was a teacher for a brief moment, and I don't think any teacher worth their salt would mention sex in a kindergarten class. That just lacks common sense, so.
Thank you for bringing the bill.
Delegate Griffith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I always am afraid to ask a stupid question, but I'm going to risk it right now. So I'm trying to understand exactly what the bill is seeking to do, because we're talking about the bill, I keep hearing about trying to prevent sexual assault, and yes, 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 yes. And even the intent of the bill, from what I read, yeah, we don't want discrimination. But what is the bill exactly seeking to do? Because it only talks a little bit about, sexual assault and a lot about discrimination. So is it an anti-discrimination bill or is it an anti-sexual assault bill? I mean, I guess I'm just trying to find out what the focus of this legislation is.
I defer to my expert.
Thank you very much. I mean, this bill is about sexual assault, and it's about all the kids that call our hotline all the time who don't know what to do, who have a sexual assault or a sexual abuse that they've experienced at school, sometimes from an employee at the school, sometimes from something unrelated, and don't know what to do in those situations. And a lot of times the schools will actually have a policy that prescribes what to do in that situation, but the kids just don't know it. And when they're attempting to find that out, whether they're 11 years old, whether they're 15, it's the burden is entirely on them.
So is this
I'm
two,
sorry, sir.
I don't mean to cut you off, but so is this two different, I mean, it feels like two different pieces of legislation, right? It feels like there's, the main problem seems like you're trying to solve is access to the ability to report or sexual abuse, but goes into anti-discrimination too. Like, it feels like it's doing a whole bunch of different things, and it feels like almost two different bills.
So a lot of these bills come out of the discrimination context.
Okay.
And so when you're talking about a bill that is responsive to these various things, you're talking about the policies that are in that space. So a lot of times you're talking about whether it's related to federal anti-discrimination policies. These are all policies in the same space. So what this bill is not attempting to make these schools create a policy. It's just whatever policies that they have should be communicated. So if that policy is called anti-sex discrimination, for instance, that's the policy that needs to be communicated. Is that?
So I'm quite conversational. I'm just trying to understand what the bill's trying to do. Thank you.
Yes, and Delegate, the bill is now the product of it's the committee's work product now, so you are certainly free to clear up any confusion.
Okay, any further questions? Okay, thank you all very much for being here. Thank you, Delegate Kaufman. That concludes the hearing on House Bill 495. Thank you, Delegate Forbes, for joining us. House Bill 488, Delegate Kaufman. And do you have anyone you'd like to bring up with you?
Yes, Mr. Bradford and Miss Gale, I forget how to pronounce your last name. And I believe we have somebody virtually.
Gail Sunderman. You have Kenzie Funk, Logan Ewing virtually, Levi Bradford, Frank Patianella virtually, and then there's someone else virtually.
Okay.
So you have, I'll let your panel go, and then we'll call your virtual panels.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. I love this committee so much. I have a lot of bills in it. I'll be back next week and the following week, too. So you guys will get sick of me. But good afternoon, Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins, and esteemed colleagues. I'm Aaron Kaufman, representing District 18 in Montgomery County. I'm asking for a favorable report on HB 488, public schools, discipline-related data collection and publication. I'm very excited that Senator Ben Brooks is serving as the cross-file for the bill. This bill was originally brought to my attention in 2024 by the Kennedy Krieger Institute. The bill didn't make it out of committee in the 2024 session. In the interim, I've been working closely with the Coalition for School Discipline Reform, advocates from the Public Justice Center, the ACLU, and advocates from Kennedy Krieger to enhance this bill and really demonstrate the need for the bill. I want to personally thank Delegate Ebersol for meeting with me and my staff twice during the interim and providing invaluable guidance for elevating this bill. And every effort was made to address his concerns and incorporate his outstanding feedback. At his suggestion, we also met with the Maryland State Department of Education and focused on addressing the justifications needed for the percentage change in disproportionate ratios. This bill requires the State Department of Education to make discipline-related data easily accessible to the public, report to the governor yearly, and explicitly break down the numbers to expose discrimination in our public schools and across the state. This bill will also require the data to be broken down by grade level, ethnicity, geography, IEP or 504 status, and gender. And let me just also say very briefly, I view it as a tool for teachers. I was a teacher, so this is not an attack on teachers. I wouldn't be here without amazing MCPS teachers, so I view it as a tool to help teachers. The bill seeks to lower the risk ratio from 3.0 to 2.0, which relates to the level of suspension in schools that disproportionately suspend students. A 3.0 ratio is too high and doesn't accurately identify many schools with problematic disciplinary disparities. The 2.0 ratio also aligns with the federal Individuals with Disabilities Education Act discipline reporting. This bill provides for data transparency, making the data more accessible, and being able to easily identify the schools that are disproportionately suspending students. Unfortunately, there are school districts and schools that disproportionately target or suspend students of color, special education students, students with IEPs, and 504 plans for students with less severe disabilities. This is a tool for schools to consider whether suspensions are the best form of discipline or utilize another approach. HB 488 also offers school districts the opportunity to address their schools with high suspension rates, address problematic behaviors, with the goal of improving student behaviors and fostering a positive school learning environment. It takes a village to raise a child, and the data is a piece of that village. The more information that is provided about suspension rates, the more actions a school can proactively take to make changes, support students and their families, and strive to improve students' educational experiences. A concrete example of why this bill is needed is, I did some research, and advocates found for me that Lansdowne Middle School in District 44A, Black students were suspended at 2.95% ratio from 2017 to 2018. Now, you may be saying, hey, Kaufman, that's really old data. That's because the MSDE has not produced any data since 2019, and I really wish they would produce some more current data. This bill would require the Maryland State Department of Education to report out the number of suspensions each year and will hopefully prevent and or reduce the singling out of students who are troubled or in need of extra assistance in school. Creating a positive school environment is a key investment in students and their learning. It is much better for students to be in the classroom and learning alongside their peers instead of being home and falling behind. I also think there's a greater degree of accountability if you choose an alternative consequence to suspensions, because some of my classmates growing up didn't mind getting suspended because they viewed it as a vacation from school. Again, I asked for a favor report on House Bill 488. Thank you very much for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I'll go next. Good afternoon. My name is Levi Bradford. I'm an education attorney and data enthusiast with the Public Justice Center. We strongly support House Bill 488 because it'll improve the quality of our school discipline data, and it'll help districts get support to address persistent disparities in the use and overuse of suspensions. This bill does four things. First, it improves student discipline data. It adds a few categories of discipline data for MSDE to report on, and they would publish that data in a spreadsheet format to be more accessible for lay people and researchers. Second, the more complicated portion of it, changes how MSDE flags schools for disproportionate discipline problems. Currently, if a student group at a school is suspended at 3 times the rate of all of their students, MSDE flags that school for disproportionate discipline practices. That measurement is called the risk ratio, as in the risk of a student getting suspended is 3 times greater than other students. This bill lowers that ratio from 3 times to 2 times, and this will more accurately capture disproportionate suspension. For example, as Delegate Kaufman said, in 2018, Lansdowne Middle, Baltimore County, District 44A, 25% of black students were suspended at least once, and that school is not flagged under the current risk ratio. Homewood Center in Howard County, half of all black students suspended at least once and not flagged. These schools would be flagged under House Bill 488. This bill also adds another metric that we are labeling high suspending that flags schools for suspending 25% or more of a student group. Now, what happens when these schools are flagged? And that's the third thing this bill addresses. Currently, when MSDE identifies a school using the risk ratio, the district has to create a plan to remedy those disparities within 3 years. But those districts are left to do all of that work by themselves. This bill would have MSDE create action plans to parallel and complement those district plans designed to provide districts with support and resources to address the disparities. And lastly, this bill makes that data, the disparities, and the plans to address the disparities publicly accessible for the sake of, government transparency and accountability. Thank you, and for those reasons, we urge a favorable report on House Bill 488.
Gail.
My name is Gail Sunderman. I'm representing the League of Women Voters of Maryland, who is also a member of the Coalition to Reform School Discipline. We support this bill strongly. I'm going to make 3 points. First, research is clear on the negative impact that suspending or expelling students from school has on students and schools. Students who are suspended are more likely to drop out, disengage from school, not do well. They're at risk of dropping out of school and less likely to graduate. Schools with high suspension rates have lower achievement scores, higher mobility rate, lower attendance and graduation rates. And the negative impact of exclusionary discipline extends into adulthood, adding to the cost of unemployment, welfare benefits, and contributing to the school-to-prison pipeline. Second, there are real disparities in who is suspended or expelled. Suspensions and expulsions disproportionately impact students with disabilities and minorities, especially African American students. This is the case in Maryland, where black students make up 59% of the student body, but they are suspended 60% of suspensions, but just 33% of public school enrollment. Third, we need, as Levi pointed out, we need better measures of disproportionality. The risk ratio is not very accurate, and it fails to identify many schools with disparities. Lowering it will help, but the second measure, the percentage of students suspended or expelled, will provide a more accurate representation. To conclude, this bill will help schools and districts identify why disparities exist. It will help districts to work with high suspending schools to first assess why a school suspends students at high rates, and then help them design a plan to address those issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the Ways and Means Committee. My name is Kenzie Funk, and I am here as a policy advocate on behalf of Strong Schools Maryland in strong support of House Bill 488. We appreciate our delegates for introducing this important legislation in order to improve transparency and accountability in our schools. Currently, disparities in school discipline persist, disproportionately impacting Black and Brown students, students with disabilities, and English language learners. These disparities are often rooted in school policies, practices, or the implicit biases within the adults and students in the school community. We know from research that targeting student groups for disciplinary action causes real harm to students. The American Psychological Association reports that disproportionate targeting through disciplinary practices is linked to long-lasting mental health effects, lower academic achievement, and overall contributes to a negative school environment, as said before. Simply, House Bill 488 improves this system by ensuring that discipline data is collected, disaggregated by student group and disciplinary action, and made accessible to the public. This will help state and local governments and the school community to identify schools with areas of high-risk ratios. The blueprint recognizes the necessity of equitable transparency and accountability in our education system, not just in Pillar 5, but interwoven into every pillar of the blueprint. When the community has a strong understanding of what their students face in schools every day, more can be done to advocate for equitable and just treatment within those schools. By passing this bill, we take a necessary step toward ensuring all students have access to a safe, equitable, and supportive learning environment. Thank you for your time and consideration. For these reasons, we urge a favorable report on House Bill 488.
Thank you. Do we have Logan Ewing virtually? Okay, we'll have Logan Ewing. And then if Frank Patinella and Aubrey Edwards are here, you can just bring them in as well. So we'll just take a second.
Good afternoon, Chair Atterbury and members of the committee. My name is Logan Ewing. I'm an attorney with Disability Rights Maryland. Today, I'm here on behalf of the Maryland Coalition to Reform School Discipline. We strongly support House Bill 488 because it improves access to school discipline data, increases transparency, and strengthens accountability, essential steps in addressing long-standing disparities in how discipline is applied across our schools. Right now, discipline data in Maryland is difficult to find and fragmented across multiple reports. Even when located, it is presented by raw numbers instead of rates, which mask the extent of disproportionality. We know the impact of exclusionary discipline falls disproportionately on certain student populations. Black students make up but account for 59% of suspensions. Students with disabilities represent 13% of enrollment, but 27% of suspensions. If we do not address these disciplinary disparities, we cannot close the achievement gap. This bill ensures discipline data is more accessible, transparent, and detailed, allowing policymakers, educators, and advocates to better understand and address disparities. House Bill 488 also lowers the threshold for identifying disproportionality, ensuring that schools with discipline disparities are flagged earlier and can take corrective action before students lose significant learning time. This bill is an important step in making school discipline more equitable. By improving how discipline data is reported and analyzed, we can ensure that all Maryland students, regardless of race, disability, or background, have a fair chance to succeed. We urge the committee to support House Bill 488. Thank you.
Thank you. Frank Patinella for 2 minutes, please.
Yes, good afternoon, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Frank Patinella. I'm a policy advocate with the ACLU of Maryland. We support House Bill 488 with the amendments mentioned, I think in one of our testimonies, Public Justice Center. Over recent years, this legislature and advocates have spent a lot of time debating what our state should do with children who have committed crimes and how to reform the juvenile legal system. When it gets to this point, we're at a disadvantage because when kids get entangled in the legal system, they face an uphill battle. We spend a lot less time on preventative measures that should be taken to curb the need to involve the legal system. The decades of research that we have on the impact of having a high rate of suspensions and disproportionate suspensions should help us all align on what we need to do in our schools. House Bill 488 is about prevention. It's about supporting the teachers and staff in the building and getting students on the right path. I won't go over the research again in terms of what Gail mentioned, the impact of high suspensions, but just want to hammer on that point. House Bill 488 provides a tool for schools and larger community to use when thinking about how best to invest funding that is available through the blueprint and other state and local resources. Schools with high poverty get additional dollars from the state and directs schools to develop their community school strategy. High suspending schools should have this data available while the school administrators engage with the broader school community on developing this plan. Another blueprint program involves doling out over $100 million a year to schools specifically to address behavioral health issues. This is managed by the state's Consortium for Coordinated Community Supports. And based on what I've seen, they don't use this data to target schools that have the most need for these resources. The state and local school districts have come a long way in reducing suspensions before COVID hit. But after returning to school, we saw an increase in behavioral issues and suspensions have increased in recent years. To finish up, I'll say this is not a punitive bill. It's about working smarter, working together, having the information needed to be intentional about prevention. For these reasons, we ask for a favorable report on House Bill 488. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Edwards, for 2 minutes, please.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and esteemed members of the committee. I'm Aubrey Edwards-Luce. I'm the Executive Director of the Sarah Neil Meyer Hoff Center for Family, Children, and the Courts at the University of Baltimore School of Law. CFCC is also a member of the Coalition to Reform School Discipline. We urge a favorable report on House Bill 488 because Maryland's children need our leaders and our communities to effectively address school discipline disparities, and we can only do this if the data collected is appropriately detailed. Suspensions and expulsions often lead youth to destructive cycles of disengagement from school, which begins with truancy and ends with a school-to-prison pipeline. CFCC has been operating the Tackling Chronic Absenteeism project in Baltimore City public schools since 2005. TCAP uses, which is our program, it uses a holistic support system as well as restorative practices to break the school-to-prison pipeline for students who are chronically absent. TCAP helps students avoid situations that are often met with exclusionary school discipline, such as lack of uniforms, disengagement from classrooms, or lack of self-regulation. And we use a relational approach to help foster school environments that discourage exclusionary discipline practices and encourages more empathy and understanding from school personnel and administrators. We know that HB 488 is needed because in our nearly 20 years of TCAP experience, we've seen firsthand the disproportionate numbers of Black and Brown students, along with students with disabilities, who are suspended and expelled from our schools. Additionally, in recent years, the schools that we work in have seen an increased enrollment of refugees with limited English proficiency. And since COVID, TCAP has seen higher rates of poverty reflected in housing instability and families needing assistance with basic needs such as food. When we can identify which discrete categories of students are disproportionately disciplined, then we can begin to use culturally responsive programming, new policies and supports and training to create change. And if we can identify trends of higher suspension rates for these discrete populations, then we can identify ways to better support families and students without the need of exclusionary practices. Thank you, and we urge a favorable report.
Okay, we have a couple questions. We'll start with Delegate Eversole.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So let's just get a little example here. You've chosen Lansdowne Middle School on 2 occasions, which I'm familiar with because it's in my district. I'm sure that's a coincidence. But, and I thank you for highlighting it because it's a school that's in need of help. Let's just get an idea of what the difference between a 2.0 discrepancy risk ratio is and a 3.0. That school has about 24% of its students are Black. Okay, so if we're working with a 3.0 risk ratio, which is, I'm not positive, but I think you're saying it's the current risk ratio that's being used. What would that mean? What would happen that would cause a flag under that?
For Lansdowne and for any school, it would be if for just taking Black students as an example, because it can be any of the groups that we listed.
I'm using them as an example. I'm using Lansdowne as an example.
Yeah, depending on the rate of Black student suspension, in the example we gave, 25% of Black students were suspended at least once. That was 2.95 times more than all other students in the school combined.
So the ratio is compared to how other students. So
yes.
If the percentage of students suspended was, finish the sentence for me. If the percentage of black students suspended was,
Oh, yeah, it would be, what, like 9-something% across the rest of the school. Because, 8-something%, because it is just above like a third of that. Because the ratio is, black students are suspended at almost 3 times the rate of all other students combined, with black students removed from that number.
okay, regardless of how many black students there are in the school, what the percentage is? I mean, how does the 24% figure into that? I'm not clear on this at all. 24% of the students are black.
Yes.
Okay, so.
It doesn't matter, the ratio currently does not change whether there is a large population of black students or a large population of any student group or a small one. It only looks at how the ratio of suspension compared to the rest of the students.
So if 90% of the students in the school are black, which is not the case in this case, even then, if they were being suspended at 3 times the rate of other students, when there are 9 times as many of them as other students, that would still cause a flag?
It's a per capita number, so it's like how many black students per enrolled black students. So it takes those proportions and separates them out.
Okay, I think I've bored the rest of the committee, but I'm going to drill down on this with you.
Yeah, go for it.
Thank you.
Delegate Wu.
You're not bored.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I kind of similar question, probably not exact similar. When I look at the 10% threshold for like sober groups, right? So if I only have 1 student in that group, because some situation like special education, English language learner, right? Maybe there are 5, something in some schools, right? So if there are only 1 student, they're triggered a suspension. That means they'll always be on the list, right? Just once.
So that, it's hard to say because we've met with MSDE about this.
100%, right? 100%.
Yeah, that would be 100%. I honestly am not sure if currently it's flagged or not, because MSD has been doing this for a while because it's part of their mandate. And you would imagine that if there's 1 student of a particular demographic group that gets suspended, then that would flag the ratio. That'd be a question we should ask MSDE whether that happens, but this bill doesn't change that fact at all.
So the reason for that is the accountability part, right? So we said the school needs to reduce the rate within 1 year, eliminate that in 3 years. Do you feel that a reasonable objective there?
Yes, that's the current regulation under COMAR.
This is new, right? I looked at this new language.
Yes, our language is statutory because that exact portion already exists in COMAR. Districts already have to create plans to reduce within 1 year and eliminate disparities within 3 years. That's the current law under COMAR, and we're incorporating it because we'd have to reference COMAR if we didn't incorporate the language, and because regulation can change, we wanted to make sure that we're clear as to what we're referencing when we mean these action plans.
I see. I like the language part about the data part, but what happens if a school didn't really follow up and change anything from MSDE? What did they do?
Well, the current bill doesn't prescribe what would happen in that situation. It's really gives MSDE leeway to decide what should happen, how they make the, whether they're going to focus on compliance, whether they're going to focus on aid and support. We try to phrase the bill to say MSD should be focusing on support and guidance to districts and not punishment. Currently, those problems exist under the current law, and this doesn't change whether those problems are present or not. It just means that we are trying to more accurately capture disparities. But that would be a good question to be meeting with MSDE about, to say what happens, what are you going to do when districts, invariably some districts will fail, because that is just like across the board. If you keep asking if you keep asking to remedy disparities, they don't change, what are we going to do? That's kind of a decision that we are leaving up to MSDE to make for the time.
I see. So did you have a chance to talk to MSD and say what did they do?
Yes, Delegate Dr. Wu, we met with Akila at the suggestion of my good friend from District 44A, and and Levi was on there, but I think it was mostly just a listening session. And then we also met where she just listened to us, and we asked for some information. And also, we met with their data person, Mary Gable, who indicated to me the most striking thing of that meeting was that they don't have any new data on this matter. They don't have any new data on this matter since 2019, and also know from talking to Levi over several months, oftentimes when you request things from MSCE, the request is denied, but perhaps Levi remembers that meeting more than I do about what Akila and Ms. Gable said.
Yeah, we met with them. My main takeaway was that they hadn't done this calculation in some years. That's why 2018 is the last year we have for it. The pandemic obviously made data really hard to trust. They had, the people we talked to, none of them knew what MSD was doing to help districts or make sure that those reports were actually, those plans were actually happening. We asked what's happening with those. When a district comes to you and says, we have disparities, here's our plan, what happens then? And we didn't get any answers.
I see. Thank you very much. Thank you, that good delegate sitting there with the two good bills. So.
Thank you.
Can I just comment? In addition, I wanted to mention the transparency part of this, which is another big part of this. Right now, the data, it's just really hard to access. It's in many different PDFs. And so just having better access to the data should help schools and the districts, make plans to deal with disparities.
I agree. Thank you.
Delegate Young.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Delegate, for the bill. So I want to get clarity because Ebersol confused me. Ebersol. I was trying to do I was going to say, I was trying to do like him. So when we talk about the ratios, you say per capita. I think that means based on each characteristic, you determine the ratio within that characteristic. So I'm going to give you the hypo. Tell me if I got it right. If there were 100 black students and 1,000 white students, and 10 of the 100 black students were suspended, and 5 of the, or rather, let's say 50 of the 1,000 white students, so you have a 5% white student and a 10% black student suspension rate. Under that, you would see a 2.0 ratio and then a trigger. Is that correct?
Yes.
I got you, Ebersol. All right, just make sure we got it. All right, yes, sir. And so I just want to make sure I got it. And then, so my second question has to do with, I'm looking at a report that was in the fiscal note, Alternative School Discipline Practices, and I'm looking at MSDE's letter of information, which candidly sounds a lot like a letter of opposition. So I just want to get some clarity on their perspective as it pertains to needing additional staff to effectuate this. It seems to me that they do a report every year that maybe this could be rolled into. I just wanted to get y'all on the record on your perspective on that.
Well, with all due respect, I come and I have a great respect for the people that work at MSDE. But going back to my time in 2012 with Delegate Hickson, my time as an advocate for the Arc of Maryland, MSD always opposes bills that will cause them more work. And so I always respect them, but I suggest, Delegate, you take their information with a grain of salt, because oftentimes from agencies, having spent a lot of time in this committee, you get sky is falling rhetoric or sky will fall type of rhetoric, and it's not as bad as they say.
Understood. Thank you, Mr. Delegate. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Seeing no further questions, thank you to all of you, and thank you, Delegate Kaufman. That concludes the hearing on House Bill 488. Sometimes I can't see folks. Is Delegate Ruth here?
Hi, I'm presenting on her behalf.
Okay. Come on up and state your name, please. House Bill 627. Okay, whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Charles Spears, a legislative intern here presenting on behalf of Delegate Sheila Ruth. Unfortunately, she had conflicting hearings today, so I will be presenting House Bill 627. House Bill 627 revises Section 26-101 of the Education Code, which currently allows Maryland children to be arrested and fined up to $2,500 and sentenced to up to 6 months in prison for committing inconsistently and subjectively defined disruptions in school, usually typical adolescent behavior such as storming out of a class or talking back to a teacher. This bill clarifies that this section of law should not apply to students at their own school or while participating in extracurricular activities at other schools. Criminal activity is already addressed by the criminal code. Genuine criminal behavior, such as threats, drug and alcohol possession, assault, by students and outside parties would still be covered by the criminal code and treated as such, and thus school safety would not be affected by this bill. Issues of compliance with classroom instruction should not be escalated to the point of arrest. There are alternatives to resolving non-criminal behavioral issues in an appropriate manner that does not expose students to the criminal justice system. Furthermore, Section 26-101 is disproportionately enforced against Black and brown students and students with disabilities, which reinforces the school-to-prison pipeline. Data from DJS supports this concern. 73% of students arrested under this law in fiscal year 2023 were Black, 2.24 times the 32.7% of students in Maryland schools who identify as Black. Such disparate enforcement also impacts students with disabilities, who make up 33% of arrests, nearly 1/3 under this law, despite the fact that fewer than 13% of all Maryland students have a disability. This approach exposes students to the criminal justice system. This is especially an issue when, according to the authors of Despite the Best Intentions, How Racial Inequity Thrives in Good Schools, the actions of Black and brown students are regularly interpreted as more threatening than that of their white counterparts, even when the actions are the same. The Education Code should meet our students with understanding. Section 26-101 is not in the best interest of our students, our schools, or overall public safety. According to a 2006 study, the resulting trauma of entering the criminal justice system at such a young age may actually worsen future behavior and increase a student's likelihood of committing a more serious offense. It is more invasive and traumatic for a classroom than other available methods of addressing problematic but otherwise non-criminal behavior, and erodes the trust between students and educators necessary for a functioning classroom. Calling the police to arrest a student is more disruptive than alternatives available and potentially more disruptive than the initial offense. The response to disruption should not be further disruption. This harm is especially unnecessary because of the nature of this law's implementation. In most cases, it is tacked on alongside other charges that already exist in the criminal code. When it has been the only charge levied against a student, it was dropped without going to court 100% of the time in 2023. HB 627 in various forms has passed the House 3 times and the Senate once. In 2022, it successfully passed both chambers but could not be reconciled before the deadline. In previous years, this bill has been supported by the Maryland Office of the Public Defender, the Maryland Association of Boards of Education, Public Justice Center, Disability Rights Maryland, and more. Our students deserve a learning environment free from fear of prosecution for normal aspects of child development. I ask for a favorable report for HB 627. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
That concludes the testimony on House Bill 627. House Bill 359 for Prince George's County, and Delegate Traverse is presenting.
Thank you, Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins, and committee members. I am here to ask for your favorable report on HB 359, Prince George's County Teen Pregnancy Support Program and fee and child support cases. The proposed legislation builds on last year's bill, favorably voted out of this committee, which established a comprehensive teen program that aims to address the pressing educational and social challenges faced by teen parents within Prince George's County Public Schools. The purpose of this legislation is to create a funding mechanism for the program through the collection of a $100 fee in circuit court when requesting any new modified appeal child support case through family law. The funds generated will be used for child care vouchers, parent education, and other resources that support first-time parents in completing their high school education. Per vital statistics, there are approximately 400 teenagers that gave birth and resided in Prince George's County, but only about 120 were still in school. With only 40% of teen parents ever managing to obtain a high school diploma, the urgency of this initiative cannot be overstated. We have connected with the court administrator, the Maryland State Department of Education, the Maryland Department of Budget and Management, and Fiscal Policy Department on the proposed bill amendments, which you should all have, properly addressing their concerns through the implementation of the $100 administrative charge at the courthouse for individuals filing a child support case, thus eliminating the need for establishing child care centers. This bill enables student parents to get the supplemental financial support they need to get educated and have a better chance, and have better career prospects to support their family long-term. In closing, as such, I ask this esteemed committee for your favorable report on HB 359. And I'm open for questions.
Okay, are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, that concludes the hearing on House Bill 359. Delegate Taveras, House Bill 543, and there's one witness. Ann Seacott, yeah, she's favorable with amendment. Do you want her to come up with you or wait?
Sure.
Okay, come on.
Hi, Ann, how you doing?
I'm good, I'm supporting your
Yes. Okay. So again, thank you, Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins, and committee members. I'm here to ask for your favorable report on HB 543, Substance Use Disorder, Student Information Policy, a legislative initiative aimed at ensuring youth have access to timely intervention to licensed substance use disorder treatment programs. This bill is part of a package of bills I'm putting forth to support youth struggling with substance use disorder. HB 543 addresses a critical issue: the growing number of unhoused and displaced youth struggling with addiction, who face barriers to accessing treatment due to a lack of identification. If familial relationships are broken, school directory information may be the last source of information an intake officer at a treatment center can access to identify an unhoused youth. The goal of this bill is to remove barriers for care and to create a pathway for at-risk kids to recover. This bill has been crafted with student privacy in mind. It aligns with FERPA and HIPAA regulations and ensures that only directory information is shared with student consent, allowing parents to opt out, while personally identifiable information is only disclosed in emergencies. No social security numbers, place of birth are requested, and parents, like I said, maintain the right to opt out of non-emergency disclosures. This legislation is about more than just timely intervention. It's about saving lives, preventing long-term harm, and ensuring that our youth receive the support they need to succeed. I mean, you've heard enough about the school to prison pipeline, so I don't want to revisit that. And so I ask this esteemed committee for your favorable report on HB 543. And the amendments put forth are considered friendly amendments, and we will accept them.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. I'm Ann Seacott, and I'm testifying today on behalf of the Maryland chapter of the National Council on Alcoholism and Drug Dependence. We think this bill makes a lot of sense. If a young person who is not connected with their family or their guardian needs to have some form of identification in order to get into a treatment program, we want to make sure that happens. And so, as long as, when we're talking about, information sharing with consent and allowing, a recognized institution providing that information, we think that is very good. And we are very thankful to the sponsor and her staff for working with us on some amendments just to make sure the language is not unintentionally restrictive. We want to make sure that young people have access to the level of care that they need. So those will be in the amendments that I think you will be seeing shortly.
Okay, are there any questions from the committee? Delegate Ebersol?
Thanks, Madam Chair. So I see the parent has to, if they don't want this data shared, they'd have to opt out. Is that correct?
Yes, that's by law.
How would a parent be aware that this information might be shared and that it would be necessary for them to opt out? I mean, they might assume that personal data wouldn't be shared in a normal situation.
Well, a child has the right to enter. They have a right to ingress themselves into any treatment center.
Now, my question is, as far as sharing the information, is default that it gets shared?
No, not necessarily. It's at the beginning of the school year that, there's an opportunity for a parent to basically say whether they want their data information on their child to be shared or not.
So if the parent doesn't participate in that answer because they didn't see the paper or they're not interested, which direction does it go? Would the data be shared then or not if there was never any response from a parent or a student on this?
It's not on a per case basis. It's at the beginning of the year.
Right. When
a child is admitted to the school.
Okay, so my kid goes to a school and something's sent home saying, do you want to opt out of this? And I don't see it. Would it be possible that my student's data would be shared? Is that the default? That's my question. Which way does it default to if there's no communication from the parent or the student?
I'd have to get back to you on that question.
Thanks. It's relevant because you have to be careful with people. Thanks.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you. That concludes the hearing on House Bill 543. Delegate Taveras, House Bill 523.
Thank you. Okay.
And let's see if we have virtually with us.
Yes, we do. We have someone.
Shalimar Douglas, Joshua Harden-Stein, and Sue Fothergill.
Yes.
And then is there a Kelly Quinn here? Let's see. Kelly Quinn? Okay. All right, Delegate, whenever you're ready.
All right, let's go. Thank you, Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins, and committee members again. I'm here to ask for your favorable report on HB 523, root causes of chronic absenteeism and expulsion, investigation and reporting. I'm really glad to hear of Kaufman's bill because I think it really dovetails this bill. The Maryland State Department of Education system serves approximately 400,000 students in grades 7 through 12, with 80,000 of them having unexcused absences. This bill aims to create categories to identify the reasons behind these unexcused absences. By establishing these categories, each school system will be able to use the collected data to develop programming tailored to their specific needs within each school. Currently, the only classifications used pertain to excused absences, and there are no categories in place to identify the reasons for an unexcused absence. To address this issue, the state superintendent has formed a student attendance task force to analyze data and identify best practices. Creating comprehensive categories for unexcused absence is a best practice. Attendance Works checklist, who's here today, they're our school attendance industry subject matter expert. Their checklist has been provided for school systems to use as a framework, and we've uploaded it also for your review. It is vital to first identify the level, identify a level statewide playing field of specific issues we're facing before introducing resources related to each category. Once a chronically absent child returns to the classroom, school counselors, social workers, or other frontline staff need to engage with that student in a conversation to understand the reasons for missing school. Schools are often considered safe spaces where students may feel comfortable sharing the reasons for their absenteeism due to the relationships they have with staff members. The data collected from each school will be sent to the central office within the lead educational agency at that county. And the LEAs will then submit this data to MSDE each semester. The Student Attendance Task Force will examine this information to inform future strategies. And from my review of the comments, we are very amenable to the two letters that were open with amendments. Those recommendations were excellent, and we're considering them friendly amendments. This legislation provides an opportunity to move from reactive to proactive solutions. By identifying the underlying causes of truancy, schools can implement targeted, data-driven interventions. In closing, I ask this esteemed committee for your favorable report on HB 523, and I'll turn it over to my other panel members.
Okay. Do we have Charlemagne Douglas? Okay, no. Do we have Joshua Hardenstein? Okay. Okay, go ahead, please, for 2 minutes.
Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee, my name is Joshua Hardenstein. I'm testifying today in support of House Bill 523. I'm a psychology doctoral scholar studying child development, and through the lens of the scientific community, this bill represents a pioneering step toward mitigating alarming behavioral issues in Maryland schools by requiring the school boards to investigate chronic absenteeism and expulsion, and by directing them to focus on specific root causes. This bill would ensure that Maryland has sufficient information to effectively address these issues. My expertise is in absenteeism, so I'll focus on that part of the bill today. Chronic absenteeism is a severe issue in Maryland. The State Board of Education reported it rose by nearly 10% since 2016, and while 2024 saw minor improvements, Maryland ranks above average nationally on chronic absenteeism, so more work is still to be done. Chronic absenteeism severely limits the success of Maryland students. Research consistently links it to poor academic performance and dropout. And there are also broader psychosocial effects. It links to reduced interest in school, poor social emotional development, and increased substance use. As adults, chronically absent children often face economic hardship. Importantly, many students see absences increase more and more each year, and these students have the worst outcomes. And psychology researchers suggest that these students are developing poor behavioral tendencies over a time as a result of not being in school. So responsive to this research, this bill wisely asks school boards to explore students' environments and search for root causes of these behavioral trends. According to research, this could include school climate, substance abuse, bad parental relationships, community violence. And if we identify these precise factors, we put Maryland in the best position to respond effectively and have the possibility to become a leader in national efforts to address chronic absenteeism. Given this bill addresses a potent risk, responds to calls from the scientific community, and has the potential for impact beyond state borders, I urge a favorable report on HB 523 to promote every student's chance to succeed. Thank you very much for your time, delegates.
Thank you. Do we have Sue Fothergill? Okay. Hi, for 2 minutes, please.
Hi, good afternoon, Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins, and members of the committee. I am Sue Fothergill, Senior Fellow with Attendance Works. I'm here to provide informational testimony in regard to HB 523, investigating and reporting root causes of chronic absence. Attendance Works supports the goal to expand how school systems monitor and report the causes of why students miss school. Showing up to school regularly matters, as the person before me just talked about. Students gain from curriculum and instruction, benefit from connecting with peers and adults, and access critical resources available on school campuses. Research has repeatedly shown that when students miss a lot of school for any reason, it is easy for them to fall behind academically and socially. A quarter of our student population misses enough school to fall into the category of chronically absent, a leading at-risk indicator equating to over 200,000 Maryland students. This bill would ask school districts to deepen the level of understanding about why those 200,000 students are missing school so that meaningful strategies and approaches can be put in place. This is different from the system we have today, which legally excuses 10 reasons for missing school and by default subjects all other reasons to the category of unexcused. Only the reasons considered excused are officially tracked and recorded and reported. Missing school due to school environment, struggling with addiction, or falling behind academically would not be considered excused. We also found in our analysis that Native American, Black, economically disadvantaged, and multilingual learners were significantly more likely to have an absence labeled unexcused and potentially subject to exclusionary responses. In order to achieve the ambitious but reasonable goal of HB 23, Maryland legislators and agency policymakers will have to consider modernizing the laws, regulations, and policies that govern how Maryland tracks, monitors, reports, and responds to the root causes for student absence. With a more holistic understanding about why students are not attending school, there is an opportunity to leverage and build systemic approaches to reduce student absenteeism. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Do we have any questions? Yes, Delegate Patterson.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question of first witness. Can you, I was looking for it, define chronic absenteeism? First of all, thank you very much, Delegate, for bringing this to our attention. But I wanted to find out if there's a definition, for example, the number of days, et cetera.
There is a definition in Maryland. It's connected to our state accountability rubric. It's if a student misses 10% or more of their days on roll, and they've been on roll for at least 10 days. So every month, that's about 2 days of absence for any reason. And it's set at that level because that is the level that research shows that students significantly fall behind. And it allows for early warning. We don't have to wait till the end of the school year for students to know which students are hitting that 10% mark of absenteeism.
Thank you very much. Also, this may be a school board question, but if students are chronically absent, in some cases, do they automatically fail the course if they miss X number of days?
Our organization has conducted a research analysis of district policies, and there are some districts that in the written policy suggest that a student could lose a grade level for missing a lot of school, and this would be only for truancy. And depending on how that affects the student's overall grade level, it could push them into failing a course. And so it's district by district, the policies are set. And what's written isn't always necessarily what happens. So it would take deeper investigation to really understand what's happening out there in the in the school community.
Thank you very much.
Any further questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you. That concludes the hearing on House Bill 523. Thank you, Delegate Traveris.
Thank you.
House Bill 612, Delegate Guyton. And you have Emily Noonan with you.
Important issue. Thank you. Thank you.
Hello. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, friends on the Ways and Means Committee. For the record, Delegate Michelle Guyton, District 42B in Baltimore County. And as one of you said in my committee last week, the third time will hopefully be the charm for this beautiful bill that I'm bringing back to you this year. So I'm asking you for your thoughtful consideration of House Bill 612. It establishes a lifesaver school designation in Maryland public schools. So what the program requires, it's an optional program. It has no significant fiscal note, never has, no significant opposition. It does not encourage abortions in school. I know you have a letter to that effect. It does not. I'll go on the record. It certainly may save lives. The program recognizes schools for additional investments in student health and mental health supports and requires them to provide students and staff members training in both in order to receive the designation as a lifesaver school. Now, some of the, just so you know what we're talking about and how it is no cost, some of the programs that they could include, and there are many, many out there, include things like mental health first aid. Most of you are familiar with that. Or youth mental health first aid, which would be the peer-to-peer version of that. So there are a lot of programs out there through the Maryland State Department of Education, and what we are trying to do is encourage schools to utilize those. For those who are concerned that recognition programs like this aren't very effective, in fact, there are over 650 schools in Maryland who are a member of the Green Schools designation, which is set up similarly to this program. And that is considered to be very, very effective in encouraging education about the environment and environmental activities. So in closing, I will just say that our students are begging us to act on this issue. You will hear from one of these in a moment. I don't know if the pages coming in was planned or accidental, but I love the timing because this is really a student-led issue. And as we all know, particularly with likely cuts to behavioral health in this year's budget, it is really important that I respectfully request a vote on this bill this year. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Ways and Means Committee. My name is Emily Noonan, and I am a student from Baltimore County. I serve in leadership positions on both the Baltimore County Student Council and the Maryland Association of Student Councils. Both organizations have passed resolutions on behalf of the nearly 900,000 students in Maryland to request a favorable report on House Bill 612. I've seen the impacts of mental health issues firsthand. By my sophomore year, 3 students at my school had taken their own lives, and tragically that number now stands at 4. After this loss, a grief counselor was brought into our school for one day and then nothing afterwards. I thought to myself that surely our administration had more resources that they could provide. So I asked them about the availability of these resources, and I was very quickly dismissed. The rise in suicidal trends, not only in my school, but also at the county and state levels, is quite terrifying. It's reached a point where students are taking action because waiting for adults and administrators to do so can cost lives. We know that schools can do more, and the students of Maryland are calling on our legislators to ensure that they do so. Please do your part in ending the reactive environment surrounding mental health crises and assist in forming a proactive and preventative climate throughout the state. Provisions of mental health should be required in schools in the same way that air conditioning or nurses are, because mental health is just as important as physical health. This bill would create an avenue for school systems to promote mental health resources in a manner that uplifts students and local communities. I've worked very closely on this bill for the past 2 years, striving to set up a system in our public schools that supports these struggling students. This bill provides a perfect pathway to do this. Accordingly, I respectfully request a favorable report on House Bill 612 from the committee. Thank you for your time, and thank you to all the members who have signed on, including nearly all of the subcommittee members.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
That concludes the hearing on House Bill 612. Is Delegate Woolak? Yep. Delegate Woolak, House Bill 540. And Laura Collard.
Good afternoon, Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins, and esteemed members of the Ways and Means Committee. For the record, I am Delegate Sarah Wallach, here to present House Bill 540, the Green Schools Stewardship Act. If you recall, last year, we had witnesses in favor for this bill from the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, from the Maryland Department of Natural Resources, Parks RX America, as well as a former school superintendent, a principal, a teacher, a student, a researcher with expertise in science and teaching and learning. I do not have all of those, but I just wanted to remind you that they were in support. This bill essentially combines those two bills into one and right-sizes the funding that was proposed last year. So if you might recall, in 2019, the General Assembly set a target to achieve 50% green schools throughout our state. Unfortunately, according to the Maryland Association for Environmental and Outdoor Education, the organization that runs the Green School program on behalf of our state, only 35.5% of our schools have been awarded the Green School status. The question simply is, that brought me to this work, is why is that? Why are we stuck at 35.5%? Well, the data shows that the likelihood that a school participates in the Green School program decreases as the student body's eligibility for Title I and farms increases. In other words, schools with students of low socioeconomic status are much less successful in applying for and maintaining their Green Schools Award status. While in Howard County, it has already met the goal and is at 53% participation, Baltimore County only has 34% participation. Baltimore City is only at 21%. So why does this matter that these schools aren't getting the traction? Well, Green Schools programs are important for two reasons. There are multitude, but I will speak to two today. The first one is that it teaches students environmental stewardship so that they become skilled at safeguarding and nurturing the environment in which they live. But if we fail to teach our most vulnerable children how to take care of their communities, then they will grow into adults who lack the knowledge and the skills to create environmentally sustainable communities, further exacerbating longstanding inequities and environmental injustice. Second, environmental literacy in K through 12 years, it serves as an on-ramp for children into the green economy. The Green School programs helps plant the seeds, pun intended, of curiosity, so children want to learn more about sustainability and potentially begin dreaming about working towards careers in the green economy. According to LinkedIn's Global Green Schools report, green jobs are growing quickly, but by 2030, 1 in 5 of those jobs will go unfilled because people lack the green skills to fill them. And by 2050, 1 in 2 jobs will go unfilled. So our most vulnerable children also deserve a chance to be part of this workforce of the future, and being a student in a green school is the first step to get them into this new and growing economy. This bill is designed to help Mayo reach the schools that have been left behind by doing 4 simple things. The bill creates a mentor-mentee designation, so schools with experience and success in being green schools can help support those vulnerable schools I just spoke to so that they can on-ramp into the program. 2, it provides Mayo resources and direction on how to make the application process easy and accessible and possible for teachers and administrators and staff to complete. It also provides a small amount of money for in-person outreach, so Mayo can be boots on the ground in these high-need schools and help them on board into the program. And finally, it requires the Board of Education to share information regarding green schools with their teachers and administrations twice a year to help build program awareness and participation. These 4 steps are the result of deep research into the program, are specifically targeted to reach the vulnerable students and vulnerable schools, and carry a nominal fiscal note to reach our most high-need school population. I also finally, in conclusion, want to bring your attention to the Maryland Commission on Climate Change's annual 2024 report. As you may know, the Maryland Department of Environment Secretary co-chairs that commission, and Senator Feldman and Delegate Dana Stein represent the General Assembly on that commission. On page 14 of their report, the commission specifically asks for support of the Maryland Green Schools program, and their recommendation adheres very closely to House Bill 540. So as much as I would like to take credit for cooking up what's in this bill, it is broadly agreed upon by the environmental sustainability community. I thank you for your consideration of House Bill 540 and ask for a favorable report.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins, and members of the committee. I'm Laura Collard, Executive Director of the Maryland Association for Environmental and Outdoor Education. Mayo strongly urges your favorable report for House Bill 540. The bill will support increased awareness of the program and establish a mechanism for mentor schools that can increase participation in the program and stewardship locally. So while we're a statewide program, the impacts have local effect. Green School Impact engages students, teachers, and communities in sustainability education. As Delegate Wolk said, we're currently at 35.5% of Maryland schools being recognized as green schools, and we're aiming for 50% by 2029. This information is from the fiscal year 24 evaluation, which is provided to the state as part of the Green Schools Act of 2019. Equity and access is important, expanding opportunities for underrepresented schools to participate and giving opportunity for our most vulnerable students. The Maryland Green Schools program transforms lives in ways which have lasting impact. Student stewardship is a primary outcome of the program. Student introduction to environmental education as part of the curriculum will prepare every student for the knowledge and skills necessary to responsibly protect and restore their local environment and the Chesapeake Bay watershed. With a network of 655 schools, this bill will improve access to information, provide resources for teachers throughout the state, and the website will and outreach will ensure that our rural districts in Baltimore City are supported. Priority areas for our work are the Eastern Shore, Western Maryland, Southern Maryland, and Baltimore City. We ask for a favorable report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That concludes the hearing on House Bill 540. Delegate Feldmark, House Bill 551.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and colleagues. For the record, I'm Delegate Jessica Feldmark, pleased to be presenting House Bill 551. So this is a bill that most of you have heard before, and it's pretty straightforward. The goal is to help address the critical staffing shortages in our schools that are negatively impacting both our students and our educators, and to continue to incentivize our educators in all occupation categories to strive for top credentials. As you know, a key focus of the Blueprint for Maryland's Future was to provide career growth and advancement opportunities for teachers without having to leave teaching. This bill would extend the National Board Certification salary increases to educators who are not designated as the teacher of record, but still provide direct instruction and services to students and have received their National Board Certification. This is aligned with the values of the Blueprint and mirrors the salary increases that teachers of record are given under that legislation. So some of the employees who would be captured under this provision include media specialists, reading specialists, math specialists, and school counselors. Now, in addition to making sure that we capture all of our National Board Certified teachers, this bill also goes on to extend a parallel salary increase for other qualified educators in our schools, like our school psychologists, speech pathologists, other professionals who are not eligible for National Board Certification, but are eligible for high national credentials in their designated field, right? So we want to make sure that they are recognized for that and encouraged to pursue those higher levels of training and qualification. This is an issue that, from my perspective, is really about sort of fixing a gap in the Blueprint. And in the comprehensive implementation plan for the Blueprint, since the initial comprehensive implementation plan in 2022 and each year since, it has identified that the AIB and MSDE shall develop guidance for the LEAs regarding National Board Certification, regarding school counselors, media specialists, and other positions, and the requirements to be eligible for the NBC salary increases. So this is sort of a persistent problem that has not yet been addressed, and I think it's time for us to clarify that we want the best quality in all of our educators and to recognize them for that. Despite this being in the comprehensive implementation plan, it is not something that guidance has been developed. Currently, some LEAs have negotiated the benefit or partial benefits, but there's no consistency right now throughout the state. And so I think this is an important step forward as we see a lot of these areas are where we're seeing critical shortages. And we need to make sure that we're providing all the incentives for folks to stay in these important roles in our schools. So with that, I'll ask for your favorable report, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, Delegate Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for bringing the bill. I definitely support some flexibility as far as National Board Certification. My question is, in regard to the fiscal note, isn't there a state share of the compensation in the National Board? So I was a little confused by that, but we can clarify with some of our experts.
No, I thank you for raising that. I am not sure why the fiscal note was drafted, assuming that this would all be fall on the locals. From my perspective, it's salary, and that is typically shared. So I would, I would certainly want to clarify and make sure that this is clear if we're adopting this, it should be clear that this is salary and would be shared between the local and the state, from my perspective. That would be my intent, to treat it just like salary.
That was my understanding too, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
That concludes the hearing on House Bill 551. Delegate Boafo, House Bill 594. And let's see if you're a virtual witness, Mia Russell, let's see if she's here. Okay, seeing none.
Good to go, Madam Chair? All right, good afternoon, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, colleagues on the Ways and Means Committee. For the record, Delegate Adrian Boafo here to present House Bill 93, did you say, Madam Chair? All right. The Public Library's AED program, otherwise known as the Romano A. Russell Act. Today, I'm here to honor the life and memory of Romano A. Russell, a beloved constituent of District 23 and a dedicated postal worker who served our community with dignity. While working his route at the Crofton Library, Romano tragically suffered cardiac arrest. At that critical moment, an AED was not available, a devastating reality that could have made the difference between life and death. His wife is here virtually today to underscore just how urgent and necessary this legislation is. Her presence serves as a powerful reminder that we must take action to prevent future tragedies like this from happening. As this committee knows all too well, libraries are more than just buildings filled with books. They are community hubs where people of all ages gather to learn, connect, and grow. They are places where children discover the joy of reading, where seniors find support and resources, and where our neighbors come to access critical services. This bill ensures that AEDs are in all Maryland public libraries and that library staff receive proper training to use them. Let's ensure that no family endures the same heartbreak that the Romanos did. Let us make certain that our libraries, that our centers of learning, community, and service are also places of safety and preparedness. For these reasons, Madam Chair, I respectfully urge a favorable report on HB 593.
Ms. Russell, please go ahead for 2 minutes.
Thank you. First, thank you, Delegate Boafo, dear Madam Chair and Madam Vice Chair, members of the Ways and Means Committee. I am compelled by this devastating loss of my husband, Romano Russell, and so I'm also here today in strong support of House Bill 593. Ray and I were married for 23 years. We have 2 children. We were just entering the empty nester stage of life, talking about and excited about all the things that we wanted to do, finally. But on March 4th, 2023, which also happened to be my birthday, our lives changed forever. Ray went to work like any other day. He stopped at the Crofton Library on his route to use the bathroom, but never made it out because there was no AED available. So the Maryland Library System says that they have over 12 million visitors in 2023. And like Delegate Boafo said, there are toddlers, seniors, people with disabilities. If the libraries are such a vital community resource that they can truly make a meaningful difference for millions of Marylanders, it certainly would have made a difference for my family. So it's hard to say this. I can't be here for Ray at this point, only for the other Marylanders whose lives can be saved. I don't want another Maryland daughter not to have a dad to walk her down the aisle, or a son to not be able to call on his dad as he grows and matures through life as a man and father. It's really hard to reconcile that if an AED was available, Ray could be here today. So I see this as this legislation is, the cost of this legislation is minimal. The value is priceless, and the cost of inaction is can be catastrophic to other families. So I ask that you please take the opportunity to act and mandate AEDs in libraries by supporting the Romano A. Russell Act. On behalf of my entire family, we urge a favorable report of HB 593. Thank you.
First off, Ms. Russell, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. We really appreciate it. And I know how much you and your family mean to Delegate Boafo, because he called me last night just to specifically tell me how important this bill is for you and your family. So thank you for sharing your story with us. Does anybody have any questions for Delegate Boafo or for Ms. Russell? Okay, no, thank you very much, Ms. Russell. Delegate Boafo, that concludes the hearing on House Bill 593. So now you have House Bill 630. And you have Lauren Lamb, hopefully virtually. And is Paul Ellington here? Okay.
Yep. Again, Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins, and members of the Ways and Means Committee. For the record, Delegate Adrian Boafo here to present House Bill 630, the Maryland Phone Free School Act. I know you guys have never heard about this bill before or any versions of this bill at any point in time. In all seriousness, the fact that there are so many bills in this General Assembly on this topic, the fact that they're bipartisan in nature, signals the importance of this issue in time and in this moment for us and for our children. And I know that this committee in particular has made over the last couple decades some historic investments in our children. But those investments kind of go to the wayside if they're distracted in the school system. The Maryland Phone Free School Act is, in my opinion, the least restrictive of all the bills that are out there. And so I'll give you a high-level summary of what the bill does. The bill requires each county board of education to implement policies to limit the use of cell phones during instructional time by 2025-2026 school year. Being less prescriptive allows county boards to come up with their own respective policies with input from the local community. HB 630 allows necessary exceptions for students with IEPs or Section 504 plans and those with documented health conditions during emergencies or when educators deem phones are educationally necessary. HB 630 also will make sure that schools install social media blockers to ensure that students aren't distracted during the day. Lastly, the bill will ensure that if a county board has a disciplinary action to remove phones from classrooms, that teachers and educators aren't the ones actually removing the phone. As I mentioned in the beginning, we have an obligation to make sure our students have the tools necessary for success, and the Maryland Phone Free School Act gives us that opportunity. For those reasons, Madam Chair, I urge a favorable report on HB 630.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. My name's Paul Ellington, and I'm with For All Seasons, which is the largest mental health agency and state-designated rape crisis center serving Maryland's mid-shore. But through telehealth, they have offices in those locations, but through telehealth, they have patients in every county in Maryland. For All Seasons, clinicians have seen firsthand how excessive screen time, particularly social media use, contributes to increased anxiety, depression, and emotional distress amongst youth. National research supports these concerns. Columbia University talks about the compulsive nature of smartphone and social media use, which fosters dependency, disrupts sleep, and leads to heightened stress and feelings of inadequacy. Research from NIH talks about how they have found significant association between cell phone usage, increased depression, sleep disturbances, and fatigue, especially amongst adolescent girls. Delegate Boafo's bill aims to create safe, structured environments where students can engage with learning and their peers without constant digital distractions. Schools represent the largest block of a child's day, and ensuring a phone-free instructional environment will support healthier habits. That's why we would respectfully ask for a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have Ms. Lamb with us virtually? Yep, okay. For 2 minutes, please, Ms. Lamb.
Thank you. I'm Lauren Lamb with the Maryland State Education Association, representing 75,000 public school educators across the state. We recognize that regulating cell phone use in schools is a widely discussed issue this year, and it's for good reason. This is increasingly a major concern for educators, families, and even our students themselves. A recent poll of educators who are NEA members showed that 90% support school policies prohibiting the use of cell phones during instructional time. And this is more than just a nuisance, it's really about our students' learning. Of that same group of educators, 83% report that students are having difficulty concentrating and completing assignments, trends that experts say are correlated with screen time and especially with mobile devices like cell phones. I can attest as a former teacher that it is impractical and often ineffective to enforce restrictions on cell phone usage when policies vary on a classroom by classroom basis. For example, in one classroom, a teacher might ban cell phones completely, but in another classroom, that teacher might allow phones when students finish work. And this creates confusion and makes it hard for students and educators to follow. What schools really need are widely observed norms led by system leaders and administrators, which is specified in this bill. And although many school systems do already have policies on device use, they vary in the level of detail. And what this bill would really help with is requiring that policies uniformly address the enforcement by administrators of cell phone policies, access to social media sites, as the delegate mentioned, and common sense exceptions for educational, emergency, and health reasons. For that reason, we urge the committee to issue a favorable report on House Bill 630. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? Delegate Ebersol.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you for the bill. Thank you for being concerned about our students. Thank you for talking to me about this a little bit ahead of time. And I like it that you've left some local control into this so that different places have different things. You've laid out a couple of minimum things, and one of them is prohibit a student from using social media applications or social media websites. And one of the things I concern myself with this legislation, any of them, is that we lay down rules that are very difficult to enforce. For example, let's say a county says, we're gonna let kids use it during lunch, which, by the way, when I've talked to some teacher friends of mine, they've said, really trying to enforce a no cell phone use during lunchtime when there are several hundred students in the room with 2 people or 3 people watching them is setting up a situation where they target people. And by the way, let's get to it. Sometimes certain kinds of students are targeted, okay, in those situations. So my question is, if we were letting students use the cell phones, say in the hallway or after school or activities, how would they, is there a way to regulate? I heard somebody say there's blockers. Could you do that could you do that for everyone's phone in the school, block certain social media? Like if the legislature didn't want me to be on Instagram, could they block me from getting on it in this setting here, even though I'm on the tower?
Yes, great question, Delegate. So social media blockers is the reason why we use that term is it's so broad. I happen in my full-time capacity work for a company that does a lot of this stuff.
I'm glad I have an expert here.
There's both the cloud way of doing it, which in this General Assembly we do. If you go onto certain websites, you won't be able to get onto it. It's a cloud-based way of blocking certain sites. There's also physical access, which is more of an old school way. It's how it worked when I was in school back in, I'm not going to tell you the year, but it's how that would work, where essentially your IP address would ping to an actual blocker in the school. But now things are mainly cloud-based, and the beautiful thing about new technology is that you can put a timer on it. So while this bill in particular doesn't say that students can or cannot use phones during lunch, I believe that should be at the local control.
Yeah, thank you.
What it does do is say that those social media blockers can be up all day. The main reason we did that is because if parents want to be able to access and talk to their students during lunchtime, and the county says that that is fine, social media blockers won't be prohibited in that way. So it prevents folks from getting on whatever the newest, hottest social media app is during the school day. Now, say you're in cheer practice or at basketball after school, now that doesn't exist because that's not during the school day. But it is mainly a web-based application in how we block things, no different than here in the General Assembly.
Thanks for that. And one more, I just want to amplify Ms. Lamb's, that you need consistency.
Yeah.
And that's what you're going for here, because if one teacher's doing it and another teacher isn't, then the other one teacher's not cool, okay?
Yeah.
So thank you. We really need something that's uniform.
Thank you.
Okay, Delegate Vogel.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for this bill. I've also heard this concern from families and from educators in my district. I just want to focus in on what Delegate Ebersol was getting at on social media. I guess one of my concerns, right, and we can talk about this offline, I know where to find you, but when you're looking at cell phones and people not connected to Wi-Fi, right? I think there's a question of, I would love to see how you actually put that in practice and whether that needs to, whether each county would then have to work with social media companies or with whoever would go about enforcing this, or whether there's a way to make that a statewide action. And then the second question that I have is related to, well, do you want to take that first question first, or?
Delegate, sorry, could you repeat the
Yeah,
exact
so
question?
do you think that there's I'm rusty on my questions. Do you think that there's a world in which the legislature at a statewide level needs to take action in terms of those social media protections and regulations, so that every county doesn't have to go about setting up these blockers county by county?
Yes, it's the reason why in the bill, we kind of have it kind of open-ended as social media blockers in the school. It will then be up to every single local jurisdiction to determine what is useful and what's not useful, right? One county may think that Facebook isn't a social media application anymore or relevant to kids in that way, and they may want to use that. So I do think there's state action that needs to be taken, and I do think this bill kind of gives broad coverage for locals to figure out what those websites are in particular.
But do you think the enforcement would potentially have to be done at a statewide level? No.
I don't think it's necessary. I think it's an overreach if the state were to enforce that piece, right? I mean, the reality is that if we were to pass any of these bills, local school jurisdictions would be automatically out of compliance if they weren't following what state law actually prescribes, right? So I don't think we have to add any additional enforcement on top of that.
Okay.
You had a second
I'll follow up with your office. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Delegate Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hey there, Prince George's County delegation mate. I just, we had a previous conversation about the bill, and we did talk about what my concern is. Part of my concern, which I didn't address, is, I like being able to have access to my child when I need to. However, and it would kind of double back on what Delegate Ebersol was speaking of about targeting certain kids, because if you implement a policy, oftentimes, and I think with this particular policy, the cell phone policy, that you will have situations where some, maybe a lot, are not going to follow it. The good kids, I hate saying the good kids, but the kids who don't get in trouble a lot may even not follow this policy, but then they'll even start to get marks or things on their record that, saying disciplinary actions on their record, and when, that might be their only issue or something like that. So have you thought anything, have you thought about that at all, about how that concern could be addressed?
The disciplinary piece?
Yes,
is that what you're talking?
yes.
Yes, but this is my response to it. The Surgeon General of the United States under the Biden administration essentially said that we need to put warning labels on social media and on phones as they come delivered to children under 16. And that means that we have to have a real conversation about the addictive personalities that have developed in young children for these devices. So say we pass a law like this. First off, if we pass the Maryland Phone Free School Act in particular, a lot of your counties are going to be in compliance because a lot of them may have to rush it to the 2025, 2026 date, but they'll be in compliance. Mm-hmm. But then we do have to have a real conversation about those kids who continuously feel the need to go back to their phone during instructional time especially. All of us in this room, I assume maybe outside of the delegate from Montgomery County, grew up in an era where we didn't have phones actually on our bodies and with us when we were in class. And I think that we need to revert back to that time. And if that means that there are disciplinary measures on some kids for pulling their phones out, then I think that conversation needs to be had, and it's a tough one. But the other thing I want to stress that's really clear is that, and this happens a lot in Prince George's County, we are losing teachers day in and day out. Because if you walk into a classroom and you see somebody on their phone, everybody's on their phone. Mm-hmm. And folks are distracted. So I get the concern. I truly do. But I do think that it just goes to the broader conversation about the addicted personalities of those students who are on their phones, even during this instructional time.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
When I was in school, we had pagers. And Pagers, then they banned pagers because they said only drug dealers had pagers. But we were just really, texting secret codes to our boo, like, Delegate Young.
My, pages. We had cell phones in my day. They were flip phones.
They're flip phones, yeah, same.
They had snake, you had to pull the antenna out, That's cool. Sprint PCS back in the day. Anyway, thank you for the bill. We have talked about this a few times, and so I really appreciate your rendition of this good work. A couple questions. The first one has to do with the blocking that you talked about, social media blocking. Would the prerequisite for those blocking is that you had to be on the school network? Is that correct?
Yes.
It wouldn't be a circumstance where I have my cell phone on my cell phone network and there's a blocking.
Well, there are software technologies out there that say you are in a school building and you say you're on LTE, so you're not on Wi-Fi.
Mm-hmm.
You can geofence an entire school building to ensure that certain applications aren't used in that building. So it depends. Again, we left it really open-ended that if you want to make it just straight web browser, if you're on the school web Wi-Fi and you can't access it, then you can't do that. And if you want to be more prescriptive and get geofencing technology that ensures that you can't get on certain social media sites, you can. But both technologies do actually exist out there.
And that would apply to the site through the browser and the app?
Correct.
Thank you. And so the next question, unrelated, is the timeline on the bill. I've talked to some other folks about the timeline, right? Your timeline is for the 26-27 school year. So my question is really talking about technology and the advancements of technology. I wonder if that timeline is a little bit too far out, thinking about some of the advancements taking a step back, the bill speaks specifically to cell phones and not smart watches, glasses, et cetera. So with the advancements of those coming up, I would imagine by the time this bill goes into effect, we might need to be addressing those as well. So I guess the question is, A, would you be open to shortening your timeline to effectuate these more specific, for cell phones at least, at a quicker pace? And then B, would you also be open to, talking about or looking at what this needs to look like for the rest of those?
Yeah, I'll answer your second question first. I'm totally open to having a conversation about smartwatches and any other new technology that I just learned that you can have glasses that record now and take your text messages, and I'm not that cool enough to know about that, but I'm happy to have those conversations about that in the classroom. I think the primary method of folks using and texting folks and getting on social media is through the phone. I think we need to address that now. I do think that I'm open to a conversation about moving up the school year date, but the reality is we put in school year 2025 to 2026, which means that once we leave this General Assembly session, it literally is kind of a couple more months later. It'll be September, August of 2025 is when this bill will go into effect. So I think that it would actually end up hurting local counties to move up the timeline, because what we want to do is leave this General Assembly session in April, use the summer to actually have those conversations with parents, students, and teachers alike, and then head into school the next school year in September, which is in a couple months, actually having that conversation and having a policy on the books. So I think it's just a little too tough logistically to move up the date.
So let's clarify then. What you just described would be 25-26 school year and not 26-7.
Yeah.
So that's just clarifying, your bill is 26-7.
Okay, well, we should make that amendment to 25-26.
That's all I got. Thank you, sir.
I agree with you.
Delegate Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for bringing the bill. My first cell phone was in college, and it was in a bag. It was this big, so it had the little antenna that goes up. I look like from Spy Kids or something, but I had a couple things I appreciate what you said about the students aspect, right? And the students being the one to put it in the bag, because we've all seen the videos of what happens sometimes to teachers when they are trying to remove the cell phone. So how do you envision that looking? I like Ms. Lamb, what she said about the widely observed norms. I think that will help if that is the norm of the classroom. But have you gotten any feedback on still about, the student that refuses to or anything along those lines?
Yeah, look, I think that, and I'm open to expansive language about, it's kind of really tough, right? When you think about just putting the administrator, it makes sense to put the administrator front and forward. And I know there's been a lot of tough discussions, especially in my county, about SROs and other folks using it. The reason why we kind of took that out the bill is because we don't want to make this a law enforcement feel when you're getting your phone removed. And so I think it's going to be tough, right? Like, let's not kid ourselves. And any of the policies we pass on this particular topic are going to be difficult. But the best case scenario in this particular moment is the administrator, who kind of has a little bit more power in terms of disciplinary action that needs to happen if they don't get the phone away from the student. So I think right now we test what that looks like with the administrator and see how that's effective throughout the counties.
Especially as your panel noticed, we are talking about addictive qualities, which are tough to deal with. And then the other part that I appreciated was, of course, the including of the IEPs and 504s and the medical aspect of it. As I was thinking, one of the things that those kids don't like to be singled out sometimes, so that might be a little bit of a struggle in these policies. Have you seen anything where how they work with that in places that have already enacted it?
No, the reality is that if you look at the unfavorable testimony, that's actually the exact point. And I couldn't agree more. And so I'm open to the committee's feedback on that. The reality is that if folks on a Section 504 plan are experiencing an emergency, we need to make sure that their device is readily available. And so there is no way to really kind of do that without actually having a device readily available for them.
Right. All right. Thank you. Thank you for the bill. I appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay, any further questions? Okay, seeing none, that concludes the hearing, on House Bill 630. Delegate Taylor, House Bill 608.
Yeah, hey. My cell phone was on a wall with a cord.
You have two people signed up. I don't know if they're Robin Welsh. And then virtually, do we have Chantal Green? No? Okay.
No superintendent either?
Nope.
All right, let's just go at it alone. All right. Good afternoon, Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins, and members of the Ways and Means Committee. For the record, I'm Delegate Kim Taylor, representing Prince George's County's District 23. I'm excited. I believe this is my first bill hearing in Ways and Means, so really excited about that. As this committee is aware, foundation aid funding for our schools is based upon enrollment of qualified students. Qualified students are those that have received age-appropriate immunizations by a certain date. A student without proof of immunization is considered temporarily enrolled until the 20th day after the first day of school. To reiterate, foundation aid funding, the largest part of the funding formula for our schools, is based upon enrollment of qualified students. And the reality in our local school systems is that thousands of students, mostly due to extenuating circumstances, submit immunization records after the 20th day and are therefore never counted in the foundation aid funding enrollment record. HB 608 proposes that the temporary enrollment date be extended to 60 days to optimize the target per pupil foundation aid that provides each local school system the basic resources necessary to ensure student success. I have noted and am very sensitive to the concerns shared by the Department of Health and possibly MSEA. Thus, HB 608 will be amended to delete Section D on page 3. Deleting that section will bring the bill in compliance with Maryland Department of Health regs, Subtitle 6, Chapter 10, 646, Section D. We're also considering an amendment that would change the proposed temporary enrollment extension to 45 days in lieu of 60 days. And with that, I had expected that our Superintendent House would follow up, but seeing that he is not here, hoping for your favorable consideration. Thank you.
Okay, Delegate Ebersol.
Madam Chair, welcome.
Thank you.
I tried to dent your car when I opened my door. We park next to each other. Come on. It's not a crazy thing to say.
That's right.
I've done it already several times. She just hasn't noticed. First of all, just clarify something for me. When we say 20 days or 60 days, are we talking about 20 school days or 60 school days? Or are we talking about 20 real days?
That's a good one.
Okay, I'll look
it
it
says here the 20th day after the first day of school.
Okay.
So I'm imagining that it's 20 days.
And you quote a lot of cool numbers and sections, and I have them all memorized, I swear, but I'm going to ask you about them a little bit.
You don't have to.
So are we saying that we're going to treat them as admitted as far as funding goes, but maybe because of the health danger, not admit them into the building itself? Are you saying they would be admitted to the building?
So there's a hodgepodge, right? So some of those students who don't make that 20th day cutoff don't come back to school. So they're not in a seat. A lot of them are still there, unfortunately, well, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, but should not be there because they're not immunized. The ones that don't return to school are not considered truant because they're not immunized.
My question is, if we did your bill and we said 60, let's say this.
So we would add.
Forget the amendment, but let's say somebody's at 20 days.
Yes.
Would they still be sent home but counted as a student in terms of the funding,
in terms of my
foundational
bill,
funding?
I'm asking that we would wait until 60 days to give parents time to get their kids immunized.
So you would let them stay in the building?
They would stay in the building.
Okay,
That
so
is
it's
correct.
not just funding, it's also presence.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. That answers my question.
That is correct.
I
And
appreciate
the notion of 60 days is, the county said they're fine with 45.
Yeah, I'm not, I just wanted to get the distinction there. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Your witness is here virtually, Chantel Green, so we'll.
Oh, good.
Hi, good afternoon, members of the Ways and Means Committee. Many apologies for the confusion. Board Member Walker is actually on the call and has prepared delivered remarks. Is she able to come out of the waiting room? This is School Board Member Lolita Walker.
Okay, one moment. Okay, go ahead, please.
Hi, did you turn it over to me? I apologize, I could not hear you.
Yep.
Oh, thank
Go
you
ahead.
so much. Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins, and members of the Ways and Means Committee, thank you so much for the opportunity to testify today. I am Lolita E. Walker, and I serve on the Policy and Governance Committee for Prince George's County Board of Education. On behalf of our board, I express strong support for HB 608. We support this bill for three key reasons. The first is that it ensures continuous learning for our scholars. So for some perspective, each year, over 4,000 newcomer scholars enroll in PGCPS between July and September. Many face challenges, as Delegate Taylor said, obtaining their immunization records due to housing instability, healthcare access, or a number of other barriers. So the current 20-day limit forces students out of school and it disrupts their education at a really critical time. So extending this period to 60 days ensures that students are engaged in learning while their families work to meet the requirements. Secondarily, it prevents significant funding losses. So under the current regulations, scholars who don't meet the 20-day deadline are excluded from the state education funding. And in 2025 school year alone, this resulted in a loss of $8.4 million to our school system. Now, had this bill been in place, 860 of those scholars, nearly all of them would have been included to ensure that critical resources for their education was adhered to. We just simply can't afford to lose. And then our third reason for support, our final reason, is reducing unnecessary barriers for families. So as you know, many families struggle to schedule these immunization appointments within these short summer windows due to limited healthcare availability. and this disproportionately affects low-income and immigrant communities. So extending this time frame to 60 days, it really gives our families a realistic opportunity to comply while they ensure that their students remain in school. So the Board of Education and PGCPS, I think the superintendent actually sent a letter, do fully support this immunization policy to protect public health. However, the current 20-day restriction, it just creates unintended barriers to education. So HB 608, it just strikes this right balance that we need to protect our public health while ensuring our scholars stay in the classroom where they actually belong. For these reasons, we urge the committee to issue a favorable report for HB 608. Thank you for your time, and special thanks to Delegate Kim Taylor for sponsoring this important legislation.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. Walker? Any further questions for Delegate Taylor? Okay, seeing none, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes the hearing on House Bill 608. Delegate Patterson, House Bill 600, and we have with us from the Appropriations Committee, Delegate Beauchamp, and Delegate Harris and Wallach may be running in here to join you, but if you have a question, just hit the button.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We're doing 600 first?
Yes, and you had, is Lynn Nash here?
Okay. Good afternoon, Chair Atterbury and Vice Chair Wilkins and members of the Ways and Means. For the record, I'm Delegate Edith Patterson and the sponsor of the Educational Equity for Service Members Act. I'm proud to present this bipartisan legislation, which addresses inconsistencies in Maryland law and ensure uniform recognition and equitable benefits for all branches of the uniform service. At present, our uniform services include the 6 military branches and 2 non-military branches, the U.S. Public Health Service and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA. By aligning Maryland's definition with federal standards, this bill ensures consistent treatment and fair access to benefits for all 8 branches of the uniformed service. Additionally, the bill builds on legislation I introduced last year that updated Maryland's definition of armed forces to include the United States Space Force, aligning with Title 10 of the United States Code. That update reduced confusion and ensured that all eligible service members and their dependents could access the benefits they had earned. This year, we're asking for further steps by incorporating the United States Public Health Service and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. These are 2 vital uniform services that serve and protect our nation both domestically and abroad. There are several vital parts of the legislation, including the definition of the state and local boards, requirements, the higher education, and finally, the higher education, commission for clarity. The legislation is straightforward, yet impactful measures that ensured fairness and consistency for those who dedicated their lives for serving our country. I am very pleased to have support from the Maryland Military Coalition and the Fort George Meade chapter of the Military Officers Association of America. The Military Coalition, which is my witness, Lynn Nash, and others. Again, we are asking for a favorable report.
So thank you very much, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. This is one of a series of 8 bills, and the whole purpose is to ensure that those who serve also get recognized. We are asking for one small amendment, and that is because the master legislation took out Maryland Statute 1117, which actually recognizes public health and NOAA as veterans. It is part of 38 USC code, but it's tucked down into 20 and 24. It's pretty far down in the legislation. So we'd like to just keep this statute in place so that there's no question, nothing. Why this is important to us. Maryland is home to the headquarters of both the Public Health and NOAA Corps. My officers serve in NIH, Food and Drug, SAMHSA, HRSA, CMS. There are 1,398 of us on active duty, not me anymore, but there are 1,398 officers on active duty, 8 ready reservists. In addition, we have about 7,000 retirees here in the state. We are simply asking to be included in this piece of legislation. We, with our amendment, we ask for a favorable report.
Okay, are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much. That concludes the hearing on House Bill 600. Delegate Patterson, House Bill 587. And Ms. Nash, you can sit right back down. And is LaShonda Henderson with us virtually? Okay, she'll come in. Thank you, Delegate Beauchamp, for joining us. Thank you. Whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And before I begin, if you were able, if you enjoyed the cookies in the back, they're courtesy of Lynn Nash for your favorable vote. Good afternoon, Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins, and members of the Ways and Means Committee. For the record, I'm Delegate Edith Patterson, and I'm proud to present House Bill 587, Education High School Diploma for Veterans. As you may know, during World War II, the Korean conflict, and the Vietnam conflict, countless veterans made their selfless decisions to leave the high school early to serve our country. There are so many sacrifices that they made. Current law allows local school boards for education to issue high school diplomas to veterans who left school to serve in one of these conflicts. While this is an important recognition, House Bill 587 seeks to expand and modernize this policy. Initially, the intent was to address veterans of the Iraq and Afghanistan conflicts to the list. However, after consulting with the Department of Veterans Affairs, the Department of Education, and other stakeholders, Senator Simoneri and I concluded that it would be more effective to adopt language that applies directly, broadly to veterans of any armed conflict. This ensures that future generations of veterans will also be eligible for this honor, regardless of when or where they serve. I would like to propose one amendment to the bill. The amendment would allow all individuals who serve in the Army to apply for a high school diploma, regardless of their discharge classification. This change reflects a commitment to inclusivity, acknowledging that all who wore the uniform made sacrifices in service to our nation. Again, I am proud to have support on oral testimony as well as written testimony from key departments or military personnel, and I'm requesting a favorable report for House Bill 587.
So for the record, Captain Lynn Nash from the Maryland Military Coalition, as well as the Commissioned Officers Association, and I want to introduce you to my dad, because my dad would have been eligible for this bill. Dad left school, went into the Korean conflict, served admirably, received a field grade commission from being an enlisted person to an officer, and went on to lead his unit. He came home, and instead of getting a GED, he went to trade school because he married my mom, and about a year later, along came me. So why is this important? Dad was an amazing man. He went on and built the Vietnam Memorial downtown. That was his work, I know, because I earned PIN money proofing the names on the walls. He was a leader, and as a result, I went into service, and 2 of my 3 kids are in service. I know. I went to Desert Shield, Desert Storm. I know how hard it is to leave your family and come back. I think this is an amazing opportunity for those individuals and strongly support passage of this bill. Thank you. You are the best.
Where's Dad?
Here's Dad.
Good looking.
All right.
He was pretty cute.
Ms. Henderson, for 2 minutes, please.
Thank you, committee, and thank you, Delegate Patterson. Good afternoon. I'm LaShawna C. Henderson. I'm a U.S. Army vet, speaking as a private citizen, residing in Camp Springs, Maryland. In support of this bill, and many people say thank you for your service to veterans, but this acknowledges that life existed before people put on the uniform. It acknowledges what I feel is a critical milestone in the life of any person, of the high school diploma. It's a reminder of value to those who serve during critical times, that the state of Maryland values the commitment made by an individual to protect the freedom of others. It's monumental. I support this bill. As a former correctional officer for our nation's only maximum security run prison, I can tell you that we see all walks of life that enter service. Some are successful and some are not. And that's the reason why the ask was for all who serve to be considered under this bill. I celebrate any honor that is offered to soldiers for their service, and consider those who may serve in the future as they make a decision to leave high school, because only 1%, some say 7% of Americans enter service. Giving up your life for another person isn't a small task. So thank you for thinking of the human that existed before they put on the uniform and honoring the soldier that they became. So whether through draft or volunteers, citizens leave their families, jobs, and parts of themselves. Some come back whole and others come back missing pieces, whether that's body or mind. And one thing we do as soldiers is we think about the good times, the challenging times, and all the things that happened before us. This is an opportunity for wholeness, of considering a part of completion of their life. So thank you for giving us the opportunity to have this bill considered. Have a great day.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much. That concludes the hearing on House Bill 587. Delegate Patterson, House Bill 596.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins, members, colleagues. I'm Delegate Edith Patterson, and I'm proud to sponsor House Bill 596. This is education for dependent children of service members, advanced enrollment procedures. This legislation, again, supports military families. It's a product of a study that was conducted by the Department of Defense State Liaison Office in collaboration with the Clearinghouse for Military Family Readiness at Penn State University. The evaluation involved extensive interviews with stakeholders at the national, state, and local levels to identify initiatives that will support the military-connected student. There were 4 initiatives that were identified, and again, I have witnesses who will provide more information, but for military families, relocating is a real challenge. And so House Bill 596 aims to address the challenges by allowing for the streamlining of the enrollment process. That is, local schools must coordinate with parents or guardians of children, including children with disabilities, and the sending school district to prevent delays in enrollment or a transfer of educational services. In addition, there is an increased awareness requires the Secretary of Veterans and Military Families, in consultation with relevant entities, to publish and maintain accessible information on school enrollment. And I will also add that we have a letter of support from the Department of Veterans and Military Families in support of this legislation. So in essence, again, there are multiple letters of support. You will hear from the witnesses, and I'm asking for a favorable report. Thank you. Who do you want?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Christopher Arnold, United States Department of Defense, State Liaison Office, Mid-Atlantic Region. Pleased to be here in person and not on a Zoom screen. About 16 years ago, my predecessor sat in this room and discussed what would become the known as the Military Interstate Children's Compact, which governs educational continuity. All 50 states are members of that compact. But what the compact we call the MIC3 did not contemplate were two military family education requirements: enrollment, timing, and placement stability. So about 6 years ago, your former colleague, my boss, Delegate Geraldine Valentino Smith, the director of our office, sponsored legislation to address the enrollment timing issue. And about 2 years ago, the Congress required us to commission a study relative to the quality and fidelity of those two initiatives to determine state-by-state variations. And what they found was that that advanced enrollment mechanism was not being done consistently from one state to another, or even within a state, in Maryland, county by county, or school by school. The Congress additionally required us to look at it through the lens of our military-connected students with special needs, and what they found was that even in districts where the advanced enrollment was occurring remotely, during what we call PCS season, which is in April or May when you get your orders, and you're physically arriving in September or October, the work was not taking place to transfer that IEP or that 504 plan. So this legislation, and we thank the sponsor, Delegate Patterson, is going to take Maryland from being a one Purple Star school state to a 5-star state.
And here I am again, sorry. I'd just like to say that military families move every 2 to 3 years. And it can be traumatic if it doesn't go well, or it can be really simple if things work, like remote applications. But the other piece about this piece of legislation, it also allows a child to stay behind. So think about those of you who have high schoolers trying to peel your kid out at the end of their junior year and send them to a brand new school for another year. It doesn't make sense. So this bill allows kids to also stay behind to finish their schools intact. We strongly support this bill. We ask that you consider it. It doesn't cost money. It's really a benefit for military families, and we ask for your support. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Livingston, please, for 2 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of House Bill 596. My name is Lindsay Livingston. I serve as the Director of Veteran and Military Family Programs for the Maryland Department of Veteran and Military Families. Our mission is to lead veterans, service members, and their families through life's transitions. I'm also a proud military spouse for over 17 years. My husband has faithfully served in the United States Navy for over 22 years, of which he has served 15 consecutive years of sea duty. Together, we have raised 3 boys, like so many military children, have had to navigate the challenges of frequent relocations. On average, a military child moves 6 to 9 times during their kindergarten through 12th grade career. My oldest son, now in 8th grade, is in his 6th school. Every move brings a new set of challenges. Enrolling in a new school, transferring transcripts, ensuring continued access to support services, and adjusting to different state policies and requirements. As a mother, these transitions are not just logistically difficult, but emotionally exhausting. The burden of advocating for my children's education while also managing the stress of a relocation should not fall so heavily on military families. This bill provides a vital solution. By allowing military families to advance and enroll their children remotely before arriving in Maryland, it removes a significant barrier to educational continuity. It ensures that military children are not left behind while waiting for paperwork to process or seats to become available. For families with children who need special education services, like my family, this bill facilitates coordination between school districts, preventing unnecessary delays in receiving essential support. Maryland is home to thousands of military families, and we must remain competitive in attracting them and retaining them. 20 states have already passed legislation to make school enrollment easier for military-connected families. When service members receive orders to move, they are not just looking for a place to live, they are looking for communities to thrive in. They're looking for employment and the best schools for their children. This bill sends a strong message that Maryland values its military community and is committed to making their transition here as smooth as possible. By passing this bill, Maryland can ensure that military children have the stability they need to succeed and show that we are a state that truly supports those that serve. I urge you to support this bill and remove unnecessary obstacles for the families who sacrifice so much for our nation. Thank you for your time and consideration today.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much. That concludes the hearing on House Bill 596. Delegate Fennell, House Bill 593. I'm sorry, 493. I said 593. House Bill 493.
493, yes.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, the esteemed Ways and Means Committee where I started at. Thank you, thank you. I am, for the record, I am Delegate Diana Fennell and proud sponsor of House Bill 493, the Ruby Bridges Walk to School and Educational Commemorative Day. I'm going to now have my intern, Erica Meyer, who's going to introduce, and then introduce.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Madam Vice Chair and honorable members of the Ways and Means Committee. First of all, thank you for your time today. My name is Erica Maya, a legislative intern for Delegate Diana Fennell, District 47A, Prince George's County. I'm here to introduce House Bill 493, Public Schools Commemorative Day, Ruby Bridges Walk to School Day, an act that seeks to establish November 14th as Ruby Bridges Walk to School Day in honor of Ruby Bridges, a pivotal figure in the history of civil rights. At just 6 years old, Ruby Bridges courageously integrated an all-white elementary school in New Orleans on November 14th, 1960. This act became a national symbol of the struggle against segregation and the fight for equal education. This bill proposes that we commemorate this day annually by engaging students across our state in educational programs that highlight the importance of diversity, tolerance, and justice. These programs will include activities like symbolic walks, classroom discussions, and partnerships with local, cultural, and historical organizations. By instituting Ruby Bridges Walk to School Day, we aim to inspire our youth with the story of Ruby Bridges, emphasizing the impact of individual courage in the broader civil rights movement. This initiative will ensure her legacy continues to educate and motivate future generations about the values of equality and perseverance. We urge a favorable report with amendments that have been recommended by MSEA, which are in your package, that will allow the state and county schools to create their own curriculums. Thank you.
Thank you. Tim.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I'm Timothy Meyer, President of Mount Rainier Elementary PTO. And thank you also to Delegate Fennell, all the members signed on to this bill, Senator Benson, the Safe Routes Partnership, and Good Intentions Foundation. I've been a PTO leader for 6 years, and Ruby Bridges Walk to School Day is one of the most meaningful, impactful events that we have done. When students and families walk together, they talk together. Walking brings communities closer together. But Ruby Bridges Walk to School Day is about so much more than walking or being a ceremonial day. It is part of Maryland history, a heroic, resilient example of the values we're most proud of. Each of you walk past Thurgood Marshall as you enter the Capitol, and Ruby's story is an important continuation of his legacy and his work on Brown v. Board of Education to make quality, equal education available to all, to make sure every student feels welcome. At our school, we invite special guests to read to students and teach Ruby's story to every classroom, Hallways are decorated with Ruby Bridges-inspired artwork. Last year, we partnered with a local business to design custom shirts that were honoring Ruby. Students instantly get the lessons of Ruby's story, wiser than so many adults. In one class, we discussed how Ruby is proof that kids can be superheroes too, each with the power to change the world. As I look at the morale of students facing so much in the world, they need a few of those superheroes right now. Because what Ruby really taught us is that the lesson in our school, because what Ruby really taught is the lesson that in our schools, every child belongs, every family must be welcome, and all of us are equal. Ruby Bridges is the perfect hero for this moment. Thank you all, and I respectfully request a favorable report from the committee.
Good afternoon. My name is Corey Johnson, and I'm in favor of House Bill 493 commemorating Ruby Bridges Walk to School Day. I'm supporting this bill as a Maryland resident and on behalf of my workplace, the Safe Routes Partnership. I was born and raised in Columbia, and I'm a proud graduate of Howard County Public Schools. As a child growing up in Columbia, I had the privilege of being part of a diverse community, living in walkable neighborhoods, and receiving a top-tier public school education. Ruby Bridges Walk to School Day did not exist when I was growing up, but I see how my experiences align with the goals of this event, which are to inspire constructive dialogue around anti-racism and kindness, to encourage students to walk and roll to school, and to honor the living legacy of Ruby Bridges and her impact on education and civil rights. Currently, I'm a senior program manager at the Safe Routes Partnership, a national organization that makes it safer and easier for people to walk, bike, and roll to school. In my role at the partnership, I help communities work on Safe Routes to School initiatives, including events like Ruby Bridges Walk to School Day. This past year, our organization awarded $40,000 in grant funds to assist communities organizing Ruby Bridges Walk to School Day celebrations. We awarded grants to 50 communities, including 2 here in Maryland, Thomas Stone Elementary in Mount Rainier, and Rolling Terrace Elementary in Tacoma Park. Over 1,200 students participated in their celebrations that included art activities, Ruby Bridges read-alouds, book displays, and community walks to school. This funding is part of a larger initiative to grow the Ruby Bridges Walk to School Day movement across the country. In recent years, California and New Jersey have officially designated November 14th as Ruby Bridges Walk to School Day, demonstrating their commitment to inclusive, accessible streets, transportation safety, and educational equity. Now, Maryland has the opportunity to join California and New Jersey as national leaders in the Ruby Bridges Walk to School Day movement. With the passage of this bill, Maryland can keep Ruby's legacy alive and empower the next generation of change makers. I appreciate your consideration and urge you to support this bill. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the Ways and Means Committee. My name is Dejanay Fennell. I am the CEO of Good Intentions Foundation, and as a community advocate, I strongly support HB 493 to recognize Ruby Bridges Walk to School Day. It's important history to teach our students. At 6 years old, Ruby Bridges courageously integrated William Frantz Elementary School in 1960. facing intense racism but paving the way for the future generations. Her bravery was made possible by Brown versus Board of Education, a landmark case led by Maryland's own Thurgood Marshall, the first African-American Supreme Court justice. Marshall's legacy is Maryland's legacy. His fight for equal education helped dismantle segregation, and his work continues to impact our schools today. Honoring Ruby Bridges Day will not only celebrate history, but also educate students on the importance of diversity, inclusion, and justice. While segregation is illegal today, disparities in education remain. Many schools in low-income communities lack resources, and civil rights history is not always adequately taught. Recognizing Ruby Bridges Day will create opportunities for schools to engage in discussion on fairness, diversity, and equity. Other states have taken this step. Maryland should too. As Thurgood Marshall home state, we have a unique responsibility to uphold his vision and ensure that students understand the ongoing fight for equal education. I urge this committee for a favorable support of HB 493 so that Maryland continues leading in civil rights education. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
And Madam Chair and Vice Chair and esteemed members of Ways and Means, I ask for a favorable review. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and we would like to welcome your daughter and your son to Ways and Means as well.
Thank you so, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you for recognizing that. Thank you all.
Delegate Ebersol has a question.
It's quick, but the chair and I both have an affection for Howard County for different reasons. What school did you go to?
I graduated from Wild Lake.
Yeah! The best, thank you. Taught there for a long time. Yeah. Good answer.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you again. Thank you so much.
That concludes the hearing on House Bill 493. House Bill 583, Delegate Vogel and Delegate Miller, you guys are going up together? Okay, take a picture. And we have some folks that should be with us virtually. Andrea McDonald, Sophia Ecklemeyer, Tom Ecklemeyer.
Should I go to your right?
Sterling
Delegate Miller,
High.
you choose.
And Courtney Evans. And is there a Yarsolava?
I know.
That's actually.
If you are joining us virtually, please turn off. If you're listening, guys. If you're joining us virtually, please, if you're listening live, please turn that off, the live stream. And then we'll call on you momentarily. Whenever you're ready, Delegates Vogel and Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the Ways and Means Committee. I have an okay panel here, including Delegate April Miller, who is a co-sponsor of mine on this very important bill, House Bill 583. Let me start by acknowledging what led us here. Over the interim, I heard from several of my constituents, including Sterling and Courtney, who are, I see them right in front of me right now, who raised the issue of the closure of Montgomery County's virtual academy, which provided access to high-quality education for a number of students in Montgomery County who, for whatever reason, could not participate or chose a virtual option as the best option for their educational outcomes. The Montgomery County Virtual Academy has closed. There was talk of bringing back the virtual academy in coming budgets. That did not happen. And I think we have a serious issue here. This bill that we're putting forward, House Bill 583, is our take at what we consider to be the best solution to address this issue, which is that there are students right now in the state of Maryland who do not have the option to attend a virtual academy, which is for them the best choice for their educational outcomes, limiting access to students who need it. I want to be very clear about what this bill is not. This bill is not moving us in the direction of virtual schooling for every child in the state of Maryland. We are not. That is not something that I want or desire. And this is not a cost that the state would need to incur. And this is also not, I know some folks are calling this an unfunded mandate on counties. There are counties that already have these programs in place. And what we have made very clear in this legislation is we acknowledge, we recognize the constraints that budgets are already, that county budgets, that local school budgets are already under, which is why we're really encouraging the use of a consortium model. To express my vision here before I turn it over to my colleague here, the consortium is currently an option. I could see a situation, and I've talked about this with our partners and school boards across the state. I could see a situation, I would encourage a situation where Montgomery, Frederick, Howard counties, among others, come together to form a virtual school, splitting that cost. For me, this at the end of the day is about giving students access to the educational experience that will best support their outcomes, their educational outcomes. And for some students, it is going to be a high quality virtual program. So what this bill does, just to be very clear, is it requires that an option, a virtual option be available to students in every county. And it encourages the use of a consortium model to lower the costs, lower the burden on an individual county in having to implement or having to abide by this legislation. Thank you for your consideration. I urge a favorable report. I look forward to working with this committee on the final product, and I will turn it over to my colleague, Delegate April Miller.
Thank you, Delegate Vogel, and thank you for helping champion this bill and for bringing this legislation and supporting all the families that have been affected by the school closure.
Right back at you.
Yeah. For the record, I'm Delegate April Miller, and I represent District 4 in Frederick County. I did pass out some information sheets. A lot of it contains some information about virtual school in general, and then the Montgomery County, what was the MVA Academy, is on the back of that, where you can see some of their metrics. We have all heard about the challenges or even learning loss that resulted from virtual education. I would like to share the story of two schools that persevered after all of the struggles of the pandemic and were incredibly successful at educating some amazing children virtually. FCPS and MCPS created synchronous school communities that were incredibly diverse, innovative, and inclusive. Frederick County's remote virtual program / school and Montgomery Virtual Academy both served as a refuge for students that sometimes struggled within the four walls of a traditional classroom. Their safe place was now their school, the very embodiment of our goals of the blueprint, which are to improve the quality and equity of Maryland's education system so that every Maryland student, regardless of where they live, family income, race, ethnicity, gender, language spoken at home, special needs, and other unique characteristics, receives a world-class education that prepares them for success in college and career. We are here today to present House Bill 583 on behalf of the families that were significantly impacted by losing access to an educational environment that allowed them not just to survive, but to thrive. I sent all of your offices a video with their stories in their voices. Please take a moment and listen to them or read through the family and student testimony provided. This bill is solely about access. It does not dictate how the school is set up, as we believe that should remain under local control and reflect the unique needs of each community. It would require all Maryland school systems to provide a virtual school / program option for their students. According to MSDE testimony, 17 of the 24 LEAs already have this established. There's also an option to partner with other counties through the consortium or contracting with a nonprofit provider, or we would also be open to friendly amendments for MOUs that allow students to attend a neighboring county that already has an established virtual school, or even a waiver process to maintain a successful program with a unique school code. I would like to stress that these options are not ideal, but we are very aware of the challenges that many school systems are facing. The ideal, like RVP or MVA, which should be considered a model for the state, is both effective and unique. It is the synchronous delivery of instruction and the creation of an actual school community with a principal, a counselor, a teacher in the classroom, services provided, tutoring, power blocks to supplement instruction, specials, clubs, extracurricular opportunities, and even a mascot, as well as ideally geographically close so that student bodies can get together after school or in person. RVP, which is the Frederick County School, has demonstrated remarkable effectiveness in supporting vulnerable populations. For the 2024-2025 school year, 53% of the 122 middle school students are minorities. 46.7% qualify as farm, 6.6% are multi-language learners, and 36.1% have IEPs and 504 plans. RVP fosters academic and social successes for students who struggle in traditional settings, offering a safe, inclusive environment free from bullying, sensory overload, and other barriers. RVP's cost is estimated to be about $1.36 million, which is covered by the $1.7 million in per pupil funding that will follow the student. I share the concerns of the Disability Rights Maryland in that no child should be denied access or forced into an inappropriate placement, and we would consider appropriate guardrails a friendly amendment. I want to address the concern written in MSDE testimony. Quote, the proposed legislation would have significant operational and fiscal impact on LEAs and could strain the resources of brick and mortar schools. One, this is not reflected in the fiscal note. In fact, there may be enrollment increases which would increase funding due to homeschool or private school students returning to public virtual school. 17 of the 24 already have a school or program in place. That was 2. 3, it could help with overcrowding, class size, and teacher shortage. 4, it does not reflect the intention of the funding design of the blueprint, which was designed to make sure that funding follows the student so each and every student deserves and receives the education that they need. A minimum 75% of the weighted per pupil allocation, foundational funding, however you want to look at it, is to follow the child to the school and can be used for the educational program. There should be adequate existing allocated resources to meet the needs of a virtual education. There could also be cost-saving reductions in decreases to SEIAs, home hospital needs, non-public placements, as well as decreases in transportation costs. And when I requested a confirmation that LEAs could use their minimum school funding for programs like RVP, CTC, early college, dual enrollment, it took a month for MSD and the state board to finally confirm in writing, and the AIB would actually only do so verbally. That was well beyond the budget timeline that when I requested it for our schools. So I have passed out some of the pictures so that you could have a face of what virtual school would look like. These are students from the 5th grade RVP yearbook that they did. And I just want to read you a few quotes from their stories, and I promise, Madam Chair, I will stop talking. One of the students said that walking through busy hallways can be challenging for anyone, but for someone who is on the spectrum like me, it makes me very uncomfortable. It would be easy to get distracted and very overwhelming. Being in the classroom in person with all the students would be distracting and hard. It would be hard to pay attention to what the teacher would say, and it impacts my learning. I do not feel safe in school. This is another student. I can focus better at home, and my grades reflect that. Traditional learning is not for everyone, and I am proof that virtual learning works. A few years ago, some kids posted on social media that they wanted to shoot some people of color, that they used a different word. This is my home school, and if you don't fund virtual education, this is when they were advocating, you're asking me to go to that school every single day scared. Being in it for almost a year, I can say that virtual school has been life-changing for me. I am able to focus on schoolwork and enjoy school. I have depression and anxiety. Due to my terrible experiences going to school, being an online school is like the best thing for me to do, for me and my fellow students. I don't like school due to the trauma at school. I struggled to focus in the classroom. Learning was a challenge, one that I felt I would never conquer. As a student with a 504 plan, the brick and mortar classroom did not suit my needs. So I can't tell the stories better than they can, but most of you are parents too. And so if this virtual school does not exist, we send those students back to classrooms where they were bullied or under the threat of anaphylactic food allergy attacks or terrified with crippling social anxiety that makes learning and concentrating impossible. So please support our families with a favorable report for House Bill 583.
Okay.
My name is Yaroslav Yanevsky, and I'm currently a senior in high school. When I was in 4th grade, I began having seizures. After many trips to hospitals and meetings with the top doctors in the field, I found out I have a rare drug-resistant epilepsy. My seizures won't stop. This is not fun for me or anyone around me, but is especially bad in a traditional school setting. When I attended school in person, I was having seizures every day. My mom would drop me off in the morning, then keep her phone in her hand all day waiting for the school to call. If I made it through my first few classes, I would definitely have one at lunch. Loud noises are a trigger for my epilepsy, and school cafeterias are definitely loud. We spent years trying to adjust my 504 to make in-person school safer for me, but after I had a seizure trying to walk down the stairs on my way to the health room, the school said they simply could not keep me safe. That fall alone left me with a concussion that kept me out of school completely for 2 weeks. It also really scared the security officer who witnessed it, the school nurse who tried to help me, and of course my family who really prefer me not dead. The school decided to shift me to half days in person and half days remote. Right as I was going to start that, COVID hit and everyone went full online. Online school was an absolute game changer for me. At home, I can control my environment to reduce the triggers that cause my seizures. My seizure rate dropped to a few per week instead of a few per day. At home, I could have a chair that supported me during seizures, so I wasn't falling and getting hurt. I could keep all the surfaces around me padded in case I did manage to fall out of my chair, and I always had people with me to respond. My teachers no longer had to stop class to deal with my seizures. My peers no longer had to witness them, and I no longer felt like a freak. In online school, I am just a normal kid. I am just another student. If I have a seizure, my mom notifies the teacher in the chat and turns off my camera. I recover in my own safe bed, then get up and go back to the next class. I miss less school, complete more work, and interact more with my teachers and classmates. I get almost all A's and B's because and will graduate high school with a full year of college credits. I am a success story because of online education. Thank you.
Next, for 2 minutes, we will go to Tom Ecklemeyer.
Thank you. My name is Tom Ecklemeyer, and I am a 10th grade student in Montgomery County. I'm speaking in support of HB 583. From 2021 to 2024, from 2021 to 2024, I was a student in the Montgomery Virtual Academy, which is short for the MVA. The MVA was extremely important to me. Being able to do school safe from home without risk of infection was necessary due to my immunocompromisation. I recently had a liver transplant, which put me on immune suppressants. This means I can't be in large crowds, so in-person school is not an option. A virtual school would be the best fit. While I am currently in an online program, it is nowhere near a school-level education, nor is it as engaging and socializing. In the MVA, we were able to follow a school curriculum, providing an amazing education that I actually loved learning. The teachers were great and made me legitimately enjoy being in school. There were also after-school programs that allowed for socialization with other students. A school program like this would be very beneficial, especially to students like me who can't physically go into schools. I believe we deserve a proper education and a proper virtual school program. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. Sophia Ecklemeyer?
My name is Sophia Eckelmeyer. I'm a resident of Rockville, and I'm speaking today in support of House Bill 583. Our son Tom is a 10th grader in Montgomery County and was a student at the MBA due to his status on the transplant waitlist. Since the closure of the MBA last year, he has participated in a mostly asynchronous online program in MCPS. Our experience is with in-person, fully synchronous, and mostly asynchronous virtual education. In-person education for students with chronic medical conditions that don't necessarily require home hospital teaching can lead to increased absences and sometimes hospitalization due to infections, leading to interrupted learning. Mostly asynchronous virtual programs with non-consecutive class schedules make it difficult to retain information and lead to learning loss. The lack of a community of peers also leads to increased isolation for these students. The full-day, fully synchronous Montgomery Virtual Academy was the closest learning environment to an in-person school and provided our son with a high-quality education while avoiding infection. It provided full-day instruction of the standard district curriculum taught by district teachers and provided a benefit which none of the other options do, which is a community of other students throughout the school day and classes, as well as social engagement opportunities provided by the program. A full-day synchronous virtual school on the same schedule as in-person schools keeps students aligned with their in-person peers and makes potential transitions back to in-person smoother for those students for whom virtual school is a temporary need. The increased availability of virtual schools in some Maryland counties and other states demonstrates a widespread demand for a high-quality online learning option. Although our son will be returning to in-person school if all goes well, we will always support virtual school because it is a resource for all Marylanders. Providing students with the learning environment that works best for them will optimize their academic performance and benefit everyone. High-quality virtual schools will be an asset to the Maryland education system. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Ms. McDonald, please, for 2 minutes.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Andrea McDonald, and I'm here today as a mother, a concerned parent, and an advocate for my children's future, asking for your favorable support of HB 583. My children have life-threatening airborne allergies, including an anaphylactic reaction to bananas, which happens to be the most commonly served fruit in our district. Every day, they're forced to make the impossible choice: go to school, risk exposure, or potentially face death, or stay home and receive a fraction of their education, 20% to be exact, through home and hospital teaching. You cannot graduate from home and hospital teaching. Before Montgomery Virtual Academy closed, my children had a lifeline and received safe, flexible, and comprehensive education, the essence of faith. It wasn't just about academics. The MPA gave them access to extracurriculars like drama club, debate team, creative writing, and countywide math competitions, all from the safety of our home. My children could participate in these experiences without constant fear of exposure, which allowed them to thrive in ways that traditional schools simply couldn't provide. But now that lifeline is gone. Without access to virtual schooling, my children and countless other children are falling behind. My daughter, a disabled Black child, faces a world of seemingly invisible barriers where her identity, her history, are often overlooked. The MVA was the one place where she didn't feel invisible. It was where she excelled, taking advanced courses, participating in extracurricular activities, and thriving alongside her peers. Without that, she and children like her are being left behind. HB 583 is not just about restoring a virtual school. It's about creating an educational system that's truly equitable, where every child, no matter their health, background, location, has the access to succeed. Virtual education isn't a luxury. It's a necessity for students with disabilities, students in rural areas, and those with diverse learning needs. Virtual schools are essential. They extend the walls of the classroom into our homes, and that is equity in action. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sterling High for 2 minutes, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Sterling High, and I'm testifying on behalf of the Maryland Coalition for Virtual School Access, which represents thousands of families with children of all ages across the state that need access to virtual schools. Virtual schools are not a luxury. They are a necessity for thousands of Maryland families. They serve a diverse set of student populations, and in the state, they tend to serve higher percentages of students in poverty, who have disabilities, or are from marginalized communities. The unique to Maryland model that offers structured, full-day synchronous instruction with a strong classroom community has enabled academic success, particularly at the elementary level. Yet despite their proven success, local school systems have treated virtual schools as disposable and have been eliminating or downsizing them across the state. This has forced displaced families to choose between unsafe or ineffective settings or to reluctantly leave the public education system entirely. These closures represent a failure to fully satisfy the school system's fundamental mandate to educate every child. HB 583 ensures that obligation is fulfilled because our families are living proof that most local school systems will not fully educate the children who need or thrive with virtual access without being compelled to do so. And we need to dispel with a harmful misconception. The idea that virtual school students are taking resources from students in brick and mortar schools is not just misleading, it's discriminatory. Students attending public virtual schools rightfully use per pupil funding allocated to them to fund virtual schools, just as other public schools are funded. These students are not outsiders. They are public school students entitled to the same education and funding as other students. And these students are desperate for their school leaders to look at them with fresh eyes, to finally see them as the engaged students they want to be, and to educate them the way they need. HB 583 is not just a policy decision, it's a moral imperative, because passing it recognizes that every child, no matter their circumstance, deserves a school that meets their needs. It means telling these students that they will always have a home in Maryland's public education system. We look forward to working with stakeholders on the issue and urge you to pass HB 583 this session because these children cannot wait. Thank you.
Thank you. Courtney Evans, please, for 2 minutes.
Good afternoon, Chair Atterbury and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. This is my daughter, Amelia. We need HB 583 to ensure every child in Maryland can access a full education. I appreciate your work on Blueprint and SB 610, both critical steps towards strengthening our school system. But if we truly believe in educating every child, we must recognize that high-quality virtual schools can't just be an option, they're a necessity. When done right, they don't just provide access for students who can't attend in person, they create a safe, rigorous learning environment for those who thrive on a virtual platform. These students form a community and support each other. That's what made the Maryland BBP model so successful in Montgomery County. At the MVA, students at all grade levels performed as well or better than in-person peers on state math and literacy tests. First and second grade DIBELS data, which measures literacy performance, showed Black, Hispanic, and farm students exceeding county averages. And we graduated students with complex circumstances who otherwise had no path to a diploma, including young parents. These are not uncommon stories, yet virtual students aren't considered a natural part of the public school system. Because these schools have been funded as programs, their existence is discretionary, pitting virtual students against brick and mortar schools instead of recognizing them as an integral part of the system. But let's be clear, virtual school students are public school students, and they deserve the same commitment. I've seen what happens when we take this access away. My 5th grader thrived at MVA, taking advanced courses, surrounded by friends who found safety and healing after being bullied in person. Now his opportunities have vanished. He gets 3 hours of basic literacy instruction a week, no science, art, music, or PE, and he isn't eligible for future enrichment because home and hospital students aren't even tested. My 1st grader has never experienced a full classroom. We're forced to choose between her education and her health. Some worry about virtual learning for young students, but I'm here to tell you, denying that access is catastrophic to their education and their spirit. You can help them thrive or let them fail. That is the real choice. Public education isn't about serving only those who fit the brick and mortar system. It's about ensuring every child has a pathway to learning. We ask, HB 583 ensures that we make room for every student, and we ask for a favorable report, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Delegate Eversole.
That's okay, Madam Chair. We've gone quite a while, and they're just technical questions, so I'll ask them offline. Thank you.
Thank you. Delegate Wims.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It has been a long day, and that's why I wanted to ask the question of Mrs. Evans. What grade is your daughter in?
1st grade.
1st grade, because I want to say we've been here a long time. She's been so patient and smiling the whole time and taking notes. So I want to congratulate her. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Rose.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. That concludes the hearing on House Bill 583. For the final bill of the day, my district mate, Delegate Gazzoni, and your panel can come on up. Ms. Push, Christopher Cano is virtual, I believe. So let's just take a minute for folks to come on. Christopher Cano, Ruby Daniels, Tiffany Jones, Lisa Herbst, I'm here. And Randy Albertson.
Albertson.
Okay, we're just waiting to bring up everybody on the panel.
Douglas Atterbury, Chair. Lisa? Lisa's here.
I'm Lisa Bushy. I think my MGA account had a former last name, a previous last name.
Okay, Lisa Herbst is here in person, Percy. So don't look for her. Okay, but I'll let you go ahead, Delegate Gazzoni, while we pull up your folks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, Chair Atterbury and members of the Ways and Means Committee. I am Delegate Pam Gazzoni, representing Howard County's District 13. Yay. And I'm here in support of House Bill 524, which adds an early childhood development professional to the State Board of Education. Of course, solid knowledge of early childhood development and education is essential, but I also believe experience in the operations of a child care business is a critical element for this role. I come to this issue with the background knowledge of early childhood learning objectives, accreditation processes, licensures, and certifications, as well as the business operations of a child development center. As some of you may know, I worked at NASA's Goddard Space Flight NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center for over 30 years. Goddard has had an on-site child development center for over 50 years. All three of my children attended that center from age 3 through kindergarten. During the years my kids were there, the center was run under a co-op-like model, so a parent-led board oversight the executive director, approved the annual budget and policy decisions, including tuition rate adjustments. I served on that board for a number of years. Years later, the Child Development Center fell under the office of the center director at Goddard. In my final position there, the Child Development Center which is an Excel 5 rated program, was part of my portfolio, and its executive director reported to me. While the Child Development Center did and does get some in-kind support from Goddard, it is essentially self-funded, it's essentially self-funded, meaning that tuition covers the salaries and benefits for the teachers and staff, education materials, training things, and all that kind of stuff. And like virtually all child development providers, enrollment is the other major driver of tuition, and the loss of just 1 or 2 children can significantly impact the financial viability of a provider. I share all this to show that I have hands-on knowledge of the business challenges of providing quality childcare. I should note also that the current staffing shortages only magnify these challenges. Bottom line, I know firsthand the value of accessible, affordable, quality childcare. And I know just how hard it is to balance, think of it as a 3-legged stool, those 3 elements: accessibility, affordability, and quality. It's a balance that is a constant challenge across the industry, whether we're talking about a small family-based provider or a large child development center. The members of my panel will share more on these challenges, so I want to leave you with just one other thought. I think we all know that leadership starts at the top. Per the state's school board's authority, it sets educational policy and standards for pre-kindergarten through high school. It passes regulations that have the force of law and is empowered to interpret the true meaning and intent of the law. To meet the board's responsibilities around our age 0 to 5 population, which of course includes pre-K 3 and pre-K 4 children, a representative voice for the unique aspects of caring for and educating that cohort must be represented at the top, and that means a representative on the state board. Maryland has made historic commitments to improving education, including for our youngest learners, including Pillar 1 of the blueprint and its mixed delivery model and the Child Care Scholarship. I believe a board member well-versed in the unique needs of Maryland's 0 to 5-year-old development and education is necessary to ensure that early childhood is appropriately prioritized to meet those goals and to help ensure the future success of our public school system as well as the state as a whole. For these reasons and more, I respectfully request a positive report on HB 524. Thank you.
Great. Go ahead. Great. Okay. Great. Thank you. Ways and Means Committee and MSCCA ask for your support for House Bill 524, a critical piece of legislation that holds the key to shaping a brighter future for Maryland's families, children, and the economy. Currently, the State Board of Education adopts regulations and policies for early childhood education and childcare, but its members lack expertise in the very area they are overseeing. House Bill 524 seeks to address this by ensuring equity in the composition of the board. Specifically, it calls for the inclusion of an early childhood education professional, ensuring that the board is equipped with the knowledge and experience to make informed decisions that affect our youngest learners. If the board already includes experts representing students, parents, teachers, and other vital stakeholders, we must also recognize the need for expertise in early childhood development. Board composition is crucial to its effectiveness, and an optimal board should reflect the diversity of challenges, priorities, and stakeholders in the education system. With 6,732 licensed early childhood education and care programs in Maryland, serving 206,665 children, the lack of a seat for this sector on the board is a clear oversight. These programs include community-based public pre-K sites, family childcare, center-based childcare, and nursery schools, and the Division of Early Childhood's budget exceeds $600 million. Yet the policies and regulations governing these programs are crafted without direct input from those who know the field best. By adding an early childhood development professional to the State Board of Education, HB 524 offers numerous benefits my colleagues will have address in a few minutes, including support for the pre-K mixed delivery goals, for Maryland's future, ensuring alignment with comprehensive birth to 5 objectives, adds invaluable insights into successes and challenges and concerns of the early childhood education community, ensuring decisions reflect community needs, better balance and expertise in the board's composition with a member who understands the real-world impact of board decisions and provides enhanced understanding of how policy and regulatory decisions affect birth to 5 ecosystem in Maryland. Consideration of financial impacts. We ask for a favorable report. Thank you.
Hello. My name is Dr. Lisa Bushy. My company currently operates 2 early care and education programs in Anne Arundel County. We serve over 100 children and have provided public pre-K for 8 of the past 10 years. I'm testifying in favor of adding an early childhood development professional member to the State Board of Ed because currently the birth to 5 early care and education system does not have a voice. At this juncture, no board member has the very particular set of skills, like Liam Neeson said, that are needed to support the thriving of these essential businesses serving the public good. It is widely understood that the experiences of children from 0 to 5 lay the foundation for all that follows, including school readiness, literacy, lifelong health and well-being, and the birth to age 5 system has a tremendous impact on Maryland's future. As such, this specialized system needs specific consideration by the board. The addition of an early childhood development professional and subject matter expert board member will achieve the following: ensure the board is actively aware of how the ECE system works and how it connects to the pre-K through 12 system, enhance the connection between the board's work and the ECE community, build a strong bridge between children's early years, birth to 5, and the pre-K through 12 system, support the board to look at how policy and regulatory decisions impact the birth to 5 system. And this last one can't be overstated. Deliver the ECE business perspective on how board decisions impact the economics of early education and care. In case anyone is thinking that the ECE field might not have the subject matter experts ready to hold a board seat, please think again. Like me and the women on this panel, and those of us online, many of us hold advanced degrees, have decades of experience running a business with all the challenges that entails, have a deep understanding of pedagogy, young children's growth and development, social emotional learning, and extensive experience meeting the needs of children with special needs, while also supporting healthy families and parenting through family engagement. I urge you to support adding the early childhood development professional, subject matter expert with a very particular set of skills to the board so that Maryland's birth to age 5 system has representation and a voice. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Christopher Cano, please, for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Christopher Cano. I'm the Director of Political and Legislative Affairs for SCIU Local 500, which represents family child care workers here in the state of Maryland. You know, we wish to express our support for this bill. Definitely, there seems to be a gap on the current board's composition, as was covered by the previous witnesses, especially around children between, essentially newborns to age 5 in the early stages of this development. This gap oftentimes can lead to oversight in the needs of these children, and early childhood education definitely provides, critical development in a child's education. It helps with impacting their school readiness, their early literacy, and essentially lifelong health and well-being. So overall, making sure that we have a child care professional on the board will go a long way. I do know that there's other bills, for example, House Bill 923. There's also House Bill 129, which will add other members to the board. We are amenable to, making sure that all those bills become one bill, but we do want to make sure that there is a dedicated child care member on the board. We believe that expertise is vital, in addition to having educational support staff and administrators on the board. Currently, there's obviously teachers on the board, there's parents or students, but there are other people that affect the child's education that can bring a valuable expertise. And considering this has been a long hearing today, I'll be brief in remarks and just wrap up that we emphatically support this bill, and I yield the rest of my time to you committee members.
Thank you very much. Ruby Daniels, please, for 2 minutes.
Hi, my name is Ruby Daniels. I'm the president of the Maryland State Family Child Care Association, and I'm also a second-year independent pre-K expansion grantee. I come before you today in strong support of House Bill 524 because as child care providers, we play a critical role in Maryland's education system, yet we do not have a voice on the State Board of Education. Maryland's pre-K expansion has allowed providers like myself to prepare our youngest learners for success in kindergarten and beyond. We are educators, small business owners, and caregivers, working every day to ensure that children receive the high-quality early learning experiences they deserve. But the policies that impact our work, curriculum, funding, workforce support, and regulations are being decided without our input. We are not just child care providers, we are early educators, laying the foundation for lifelong learning. Without representation on the board, the unique needs of early childhood education, especially in family child care and independent pre-K programs, are often overlooked. This bill is about fairness. If we are trusted to educate and prepare pre-K students, then we should also have a seat at the table when decisions are made about their education. I urge you to pass House Bill 524 and ensure that early childhood professionals finally have the representation we deserve. Thank you for your time and consideration. I know it's a long day.
Thank you. Tiffany Jones, please, for 2 minutes.
Hi, my name is Tiffany Jones, and I'm a family child care educator and owner of Precious Moments Family Child Care, a pre-K expansion partner in Rockville. I'm here to urge you to add an early childhood development professional to the Maryland State Board of Education. Learning begins at birth. This just isn't a slogan, it's grounded in truth and research as well as experience. Early childhood professionals are on the front lines entrusted with the critical task of nurturing and educating the youngest members of our community. But we face unique challenges and systematic barriers that are often overlooked. One of the biggest obstacles is the lack of equity in our system. State subsidy reimbursement rates vary whether we work in the family child care, large family child care, or center-based care, creating a system that's inherently biased and unequal. These discrepancies do not only impact our ability to provide quality care, but they undermine the very professionals who dedicate themselves to the development of children from birth onward. Moreover, there's no alignment between the standards for pre-K students versus other children in care. We're governed by different sets of rules that often contradict each other. Office of Child Care Regulations, pre-K requirements, zoning requirements, accreditation standards, and more. This disconnection is felt every single day by the children, families, and educators who are working tirelessly to do the best that they can in a fractured system. Most importantly, we are without a voice in shaping decisions that directly affect the work that we do. It's time to imagine a future where early childhood professionals are recognized, respected, compensated equitably, and have an authentic voice. Add an early childhood development professional to the Maryland State Board of Education who can advocate for equity, alignment, and most importantly, for the voice of those who are closest to the children and families we serve. Thank you.
Thank you. Liz Hammond, please, for 2 minutes.
Hello, Chair Atterbury, members of the committee. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name is Liz Hammond. I'm here on behalf of the Columbia Democratic Club in favor of HB 524. Our members voted to support this legislation because we are experiencing firsthand the consequences of Maryland's failure to include early childhood education administrators in any of the rooms where public school legislative and policy decisions have been made. It's one thing for educators to understand the unique developmental needs of our youngest learners, and an entirely different thing to understand the administrative and operational demands of running a high-quality early childhood education program. The distinction and the importance was lost on the Kerwin Commission to the detriment of Columbia's nursery schools. The blueprint allows for public schools to partner with community preschools as expanded access to pre-K is implemented. But community preschools aren't governed or regulated in the same way as public schools. And virtually everything about running a preschool differs from running an elementary school. And yet no one on our state Board of Education has expertise in that area. For 50 years, families in Columbia could choose between a dozen or more cooperative nursery schools. I had the pleasure of administering one of these programs for 6 years. It was not a daycare center. It was a licensed school with highly credentialed veteran teachers. We also had a 50-year track record of graduating students who were ready for kindergarten. We had hundreds of repeat customers. We navigated the COVID-19 pandemic without a single day of virtual instruction and without a single COVID transmission, not one. We were a gem in Columbia's crown, but the blueprint requirements for pre-K partners is so excessive and so inflexible, our exceptional program did not qualify. So not just our program, one after another of these cooperative schools has shuttered in the last 24 months. Now Columbia has but a few special cooperatives left. Nothing can be done to change the past, but my story is illustrative of the imperative to give more consideration to the advice, experience, and expertise of people who understand the unique demands of ECE programs. A seat on the Maryland Board of Education that is reserved for this purpose is a no-brainer. Columbia Democratic Club requests a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Reyes, good to see you. 2 minutes, please.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Carolina Reyes. I am the owner and director of Bilingual Childcare Center in Prince George County. I serve a diversity group of families and children, including Head Start. I'm an advocate for early childhood education as well. Maryland has the opportunity to fully embody the Board of Education vision, which is ensuring all students have access to a world-class educational system that prepares them to graduate ready. Achieving this vision requires providing high-quality learning opportunities for all children, starting with the early childhood education at birth. Maryland must fully integrate our childhood community across sectors by allowing representation on the Board of Education. Adding a seat for an early childhood development professional will bring inclusion, amplify the voices of those in the field, and bring real stories from those families and educators who experience the system daily. Maryland decided to elevate and improve early childhood education by creating the blueprint for universal pre-K with the ideas of the mixed delivery system. But in order to have a true delivery system, we need representation at the table where decision makings happen. The board has a student, a parent, and a teacher, and being part of the board. And why is this? Because the board values their daily experience and their input on important decisions and is needed, right? Then why not to have a representative of the vast childcare community? Yes, I say childcare. Maybe by having representation on the board, we can end the stigma that childcare is simply a babysitting. Early childhood development professionals are childcare teachers. Childcare is the foundation of education, and it is time we make these experts in early childhood development become members of the Board of Education and continue to support their mission to be part of the strategic direction and leadership, to support policy making and resource allocation, and foster engagement and advocacy. Maryland needs to push for transformative change, and we can start by having a representation on the Board of Education. Thank you.
Thank you. Randy Albertson, good to see you. For 2 minutes, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I am Randy Albertson. I own Innovations in Education, LLC. We provide professional development and consulting for early childhood programs in Maryland. I'm testifying in favor of HB 524, increasing the State Board of Education membership from 13 to 14 members to include an early childhood development professional in a dedicated seat. Prior to my current position in early childhood, I taught kindergarten in Montgomery County Public Schools. I worked in a child care center, and I was a licensed family child care provider in Maryland. I'm here to share my experience working in public schools and in community-based child care settings. My experience has taught me that public school policies and practices are very different from those in regulated childcare settings. While public schools and community-based programs fall under the guise of MSDE, they are not the same. The language and terminology used in public schools is very different from those used in community-based programs. The regulations are different. The oversight is different. The funding is different. The staff qualifications are different. The workload is different. The length of the workday is different. The interactions and relationships with families are different. Because MSDE oversees both community-based early childhood programs and LEAs, the State Board of Education oversees both types of settings as well. And yet, there is no representation on the state board to reflect the voice of community-based early childhood programs. If the State Board of Education is making recommendations for birth to 12 education in Maryland, and the composition of the state board is reflective of all stakeholders, then it follows that a dedicated seat for a representative from the early childhood community-based programs should also be included. I'm here to request a favorable report for this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. There was a Cynthia Webb sign up in person, but there's no one else here. Okay. And then two other people don't seem to be with us virtually. Courtney Cabrera and Christiana Lopez are not there, correct? Okay. Okay, are there any questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That concludes the hearing on House Bill 524, and that concludes the bill hearings for the Ways and Means Committee for today.